You're live.
Please rise as you are able. I now call this meeting of City Council to order.
We acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. Anishinaabe include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. We're dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. You may be seated. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a full business agenda tonight, as well as a couple of very important awards and recognition items to do before that. Tonight's City Council meeting is being held virtually with members of Council, the Executive Management Team, Deputy City Clerk, and the City Clerk participating via video conference. The Senior Leadership Team, who have reports on tonight's agenda, are not visible at the moment, but they are available to answer questions if we have any. But before I start tonight, sadly, again, I need to make a announcement and acknowledge the passing of Bruce Owen, February 7th last week, at the age of 90. For those who knew him, you would not ever forget him. He practiced law in the city of Barrie for 63 years. He was a small claims court judge, former Barrie alderman, member of City Council, and a member of provincial parliament. He was an extremely active community leader. At one time, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, the Kiwanis Club, Mental Health Association, Barrie Concerts, Georgian Music, and Colors of Music. And just to name those is to understate his role. He was truly a champion for music in our community and created many of those festivals to bring music to Barrie. He was part of the leadership that brought Barrie Centennial Park, Kempenfest, the current RVH building, and an MRI machine for that hospital. He also helped bring Honda to Alliston when in government and was part of the effort to bring legislation to ban smoking in Ontario workplaces, something we now take for granted. Bruce was also the recipient of the Governor General's Caring Canadian Award and the Province of Ontario June Colwood Leadership Award. He was extremely well known for his singing voice, was a notable feature of several Barrie musical events, and himself a soloist at churches throughout the city. I attended Bruce's funeral this weekend on Saturday, and I can tell you that one of the stories, so many stories told and that could be told, but that his son Trevor told during the eulogy was about a woman who was going to lose her house. She was shut in, she was quite elderly, struggling to deal with matters financial and legal, and Bruce stepped in of his own accord, arranged some $12,000 worth of work to be done to help her with the house, and then helped advocate and protect her from the court process, which resulted in her and her family being able to keep that house. He did that last year at age 89, and for a resident who was of similar age. Those incredible acts of kindness and compassion are one of the many things that Bruce can and should be remembered for. We've lost another giant, and it's with great regret that we acknowledge his passing. With that, we move on to confirming the minutes. The first item on the agenda is confirmation of the minutes of the City Council meeting that was held January 31st, 2022. Those minutes have been circulated. Are there any corrections? Seeing none, minutes are adopted as printed and circulated. Two very important items on to happier news under awards and recognition this evening. First is the 2021 Heritage Barrie Awards. These are the awards for accomplishments last year in the protection of heritage in our community. And I will now call on Councillor Riepma, Chair of Heritage Barrie, to say a few words about those awards, and he will also be joined by Councillor Jim Harris and Councillor Keenan Aylwin to make the individual award presentations very shortly. Councillor Riepma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome to everybody that's joined us and that is interested in heritage. Every February, we have a week that we dedicate to Heritage Week, and also in the February, during that week we give out our Heritage Awards, and these awards are nominated by the community. And we ask the community to suggest buildings and people that are deserving of an award. And again, we're doing it virtually this year. And so, Mr. Mayor, if there's a few bumps along the way, I hope you will forgive that. But we definitely have a great deal to celebrate. This year, we are celebrating 3 buildings and 2 groups of people. And you know, when I went to school, history was one of the more boring subjects, I must say. It was usually just learning a list of dates, and it was usually about some dead kings that had died years and years ago. But really, you know, history, when you think about it, is really all about people. And it's the buildings that these people built, the lives that they lived in them, and the people that live in them today that treasure those buildings and keep their stories alive. So without further ado, I get to hand out the very first award. And if staff can, somebody at staff can roll the, there we go. All right, next slide, please. All right, every year, yeah, we give these out to encourage people to get involved in historic preservation. And I'll talk more about how you do that at the end. Next slide, please. So the very first award goes to 47 Rodney Street this year. Now, it's a single-story L-shaped heritage house, and it's designated under the Heritage Act. It was built in 1849. That's 173 years ago. The headmaster of the Barrie Grammar School built this house. It's a Regency-style residence, and it's located on the northeast corner of Blake and Rodney Street. The school, the boarding house, and houses for teachers were built in the general area. Many of the students became renowned Canadians, and the grammar school eventually evolved into Barrie Central Collegiate. In 1861, Sheriff Benjamin Walker Smith moved into the house, and Smith is the founder of Collingwood. He brought the railway to Barrie, and in 1859, saved the lives of the future Prime Minister John A. Macdonald, as well as some of the founding fathers of Canada. The Smith family built the Lake Simcoe Hotel on their Blake Street frontage, and they lived at 47 Rodney at this house until 1971. Sue Murdoch and Harry Lahr have been its owners since 1981. And it's with great pleasure that I offer this award. Can I have the next slide as well so you get a picture? This is it in the summertime. And you'll note in the bottom right, there is also a barn on the property. And one of the interesting notes on this on this building or this house is that there is a second suite here, and it is a affordable suite. Sue and Harry have entered into that agreement with the county, and you can see that this is a very successful way of encouraging affordable housing to occur, even in a home that is 179 years old. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Councillor Aylwin to do the next presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Rietma. It is my honor to present the next Heritage Award in the commercial category to the Queen's Hotel. The Queen's is Barrie's oldest hotel. Called the Barrie Hotel until 1924, this Georgian-style building has been in continuous operation as a hotel since it was opened by Edward Marks in 1850. In a village filled with frame and log structures and still without a brickworks, Edward Marks made a bold and likely expensive decision to use buff-colored brick for his hotel. A passage on the west side of the building, which was bridged by an addition in 1866, led to the rear stable yard. A slight setback from the street still draws attention to the location. The Queen's is an important part of Barrie's built heritage. I myself have fond memories in my early 20s of late nights appreciating the heritage of this building at the Queen's Hotel. At least that's what I tell people we were doing there. So I'm proud that this downtown Barrie icon is being celebrated for its heritage value in our community. And the award is being presented to Mr. Chris Gerard, the owner of the Queen's. He was unable to make it this evening, but congratulations to him and the whole team at the Queen's.
Thank you, Councillor Aylwin. And I neglected to ask Sue Murdoch to say a few words. So if somebody could unmute her and let her speak.
Hi, we're here. Can you hear us?
Yes, excellent.
Hi. Hi. Well, thank you for this. And Councillor Rietma, you're absolutely right. It's about the architecture. It's about the stories. It's about preserving knowledge, really. And on that note, we would like very much to extend an invitation to you, Mayor Lehman, and to members of council to actually tour this house. Experience, as Councillor Rietma did quite recently, I had him over here, just to experience the site, to learn about its history, to learn its significance to Barrie and to Canada, actually, in this case. So Councillor Rietma has our contacts, and come for a tour. It's our Valentine's Day gift to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the award. It's appreciated.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your hospitality as well. Could we have the slideshow back again? Thank you. And the next slide, please. And this award goes to 178 Bayfield Street. Also in Ward 2, Councillor Aylwin, would you present the award?
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Rietma. So the next award in the commercial category is going to 178 Bayfield Street. In 1895, Toronto architects Edwards and Webster built this Queen Anne style home, which they also designed. This very refined and stylish building was not common in Barrie, and it continues to have a strong street presence to this day. The home was built for John H. Bennett. From about 1888 to 1917, Bennett served in several public offices, including alderman, mayor, reeve, Water and Light Commissioner, and Collegiate Institute trustee. President of the Ontario Horticultural Association, Bennett was inspired by gardening and had a greenhouse built behind his home. Bennett's series of reminiscences in the local newspaper capture anecdotal information about Barrie's history and development that's not available elsewhere. This was Bennett's home until 1941. So we're proud to congratulate the owners of 178 Bayfield Street for their win in the commercial category this evening. And I believe accepting the award tonight is Margaret Lindsay.
Hi. First off, I want to say it's an honor and a privilege to receive the award on behalf of our partners. And we wish to remain proud custodians of this historically significant property and do so for generations to come. A very quick thank you to our nominator, Deb Excel. And I have to say, this building in the city of Barrie is actually more like a community hub. We have various services in the building. We have a family law lawyer, we have rehab support services, we have a psychologist, we have social workers and psychotherapists. And the one thing that I find when people come into the building is the calmness. And I too would like to invite council at any time, if you would love to come in and see this building, which we're so proud of, you're more than welcome to come, and I would be very happy to give you a tour. So thank you for the honor.
And thank you very much for all your work on this. All right, can we have the slideshow back up again? Thank you. And if we could have the next slide as well. So this gives you some idea of the interior of 178 Bayfield. Very rich in its architectural history. Okay, next slide, please. So I said at the outset that history is all about people. And I'm going to ask Councillor Harris to do the next two awards, and both of them are to people. Councillor Harris.
Great, thank you, Councillor Rietma. And on behalf of Heritage Barrie and Barrie City Council, it's my pleasure to award Barrie Today. The Heritage Committee nominated Barrie Today for a group award for their ongoing segment of Barrie Today called Then and Now. Then and Now segment gives the readers of Barrie Today and the broader public an insight into the stories behind the people, events, and buildings that made the communities that we call the city of Barrie. In other words, Barrie Today helps enrich our understanding of a shared past by filling in missing pieces, showing historic photographs, and helping the residents of Barrie foster a meaningful sense of place and appreciation for their community. So it's my pleasure again to also accept this on behalf of Barrie Today, because Raymond Bowe, the editor, couldn't make it tonight. But he did share some words, and I will share them on behalf of Mr. Bowe. Good evening, members of council, and thank you for the chance to share a few words about this award. On behalf of the news team at Barrie Today, we are very much appreciative of this honor from Heritage Barrie. It speaks to our overall approach with news coverage in the city, which is to be as local as possible. That has been our mantra since day one. Since Barrie Today's inception in October 2015, history has always been a large part of what we do on the news site, beginning with Mary Harris, Remember the Column, on Saturdays, and growing to also include Deb Excel's Then and Now feature on Sundays, not to mention various stories from Ian McEnroy throughout the week. This award is truly a nod to their hard work, passion, and dedication. Whether it's digging up those old yarns from the history books and telling them in a compelling way, or putting a new spin on an old story, altogether it hopefully helps educate and entertain our readership. While news is usually about immediacy and looking at what lies ahead, it's evident there is also a critical need to peer back into the rearview mirror to see how we got here in the first place. Not only does it help people remember the past, it also informs new Barrie residents of the city's history and the people who helped grow it and make it into what it is today. From buildings to people, heritage is something that should be highlighted with this award. And with this award, we are very grateful that our efforts are being recognized. So once again, thanks from everyone at Barrie Today. So that's a wonderful, wonderful statement from Mr. Bowe. Thank you again.
All right.
And I'm happy to continue on.
Yes, please.
So our next award for a group is for the Sir Robert Barrie Committee.
Wait on the next slide, please.
Thank you. There they are. Founded in 2015, the Sir Robert Barrie Project Committee was established to produce educational material about the city's namesake, Sir Robert Barrie. The committee raised $37,000 for the project. These funds were used to commission 2 original paintings, which will be shown on the next slide. Further, the committee worked to purchase and furnish a display cabinet, which currently sits outside the mayor's office on the 2nd floor of City Hall. It shows a replica uniform, one that would have been worn by Sir Robert Barrie during service and similar to the one worn in the picture on this slide. By completing this outstanding project, the Sir Robert Barrie Project Committee has demonstrated inspired leadership, initiative, and commitment to ensuring that the citizens of Barrie are aware of the hero behind the name of our great city. Their efforts have resulted in an increased sense of pride in our community. How many can say that their namesake was a hero of the War of 1812? The committee members are the late and former City of Barrie Alderman, H. Colonel Emeritus Rob Warman, former City of Barrie Mayor, I guess that's H. Colonel, is it honor? I'm not very good with my military. Emeritus Janice Laking, a Major Retired Jean-Maurice Pigeon, and Master Warrant Officer Randy Rice, Lieutenant Colonel Bill Sargent. Thank you. And you see the slides. The picture on the left is a painting of Post Captain Royal Navy Robert Barrie, and noted for his stellar service during the War of 1812. He was given command of the HMS Dragon, as seen in the background. HMS Dragon played a major role in the blockade of American forces in Chesapeake Bay. During his command in charge of the British squadron, some 85 vessels were taken, either captured or sunk. The picture on the right, the HMS Barrie, which was a corvette which served during World War II. Accepting the award on behalf of the Sir Robert Barrie Project Committee is Mr. Bill Sargent. I'll pass it over to Mr. Sargent or Councillor.
Good evening, Your Worship, Mayor Lehman, members and staff of the City Council. I'd like to thank you, the Heritage Barrie Committee, and Councillor Rietma for recognizing the Sir Robert Barrie Project Committee with a 2021 Heritage Barrie Group Award. The purpose of our committee, as mentioned, has been to promote our city's namesake, Rear Admiral Sir Robert Barrie, Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath, and Knight Commander of the Guelphic Order. We've been blessed to have support of Mayor Lehman and the International Relations Committee for the past 10 years in this endeavor. The credit for initiating the twinning with the borough of Harrogate, where Sir Robert and his wife are buried, goes to Jean-Maurice Pigeon. Through his efforts with Sir Thomas Ingleby, our city enjoys close ties with Harrogate today. As mentioned earlier, former Mayor and Honorary Colonel Emeritus Janice Laking, and our Chairman, former Alderman and Honorary Colonel Rob Warman, who passed away on the 15th of January, may he rest in peace. We had a lot of firepower there, if I can use the pun, to promote Sir Robert Barrie. They were outstanding fundraisers, and without their efforts, we would not have had the paintings or the display case. The other member of our committee is Master Warrant Officer retired Randolph Rice, who has done numerous presentations about Sir Robert Barrie at schools, service clubs, and other interested organizations. In so doing, he has let the audience know about this hero of the War of 1812. The other thing that you should be aware of is that he prevented the spread of the cholera pandemic in the 1830s in the Kingston area. The next step for our committee is to have an original Royal Canadian Naval pennant that flew on HMCS Barrie, framed and hung in the rotunda of City Hall, as well as celebrating Sir Robert Barrie Day again this year on the 7th of June, which will mark the 181st anniversary of his death. Thank you again for this award, and happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harris, the next award is for the Gray and Simcoe Foresters.
Thank you, Councillor Rietma. And again, on behalf of the committee, we would like to honor another group, the Gray and Simcoe Foresters. The Great Simcoe Foresters Regimental Museum is located on the old company armory, which was built in 1889 as a drill hall for the volunteer militia raised from the surrounding counties. The museum offers an insight into the contribution the Grey and Simcoe Foresters Regiment has made to the development of Canada as a country and its continuing Canadian presence in world events. Visitors can view historically significant artifacts, including examples of period uniforms, medals, field gear, official recognitions, and documentation collected over the regiment's long history. The museum tells stories of not only Barrie residents, but also of veterans who lived in surrounding communities. The Heritage Barrie Committee chose the Regimental Museum for an award because of their ongoing work to preserve and share the military history of the residents of Barrie and other communities. Thank you again to the Grey and Simcoe Foresters for the work that they do to preserve our heritage. Now, I don't know if we have someone who's representing the group, Councillor Reitman. I don't have that.
Yes, I'm not sure. Is Peter Lister available? No, maybe not.
No.
All right. Well,
Madam Clerk, he is there.
Yes.
Yep, just bear with us a moment, Councillor Reitman. All right, I see Mr. Lister's name. Mr. Lister, if you put your video or audio on, you are in the City Council meeting. We can hear you, Mr. Lister, I think. Go ahead. Oh, maybe not. Oh, we're not getting audio from Mr. Lister.
All right. I hear something. I don't know. Oh. Is there any staff able to help or?
Apparently the issue is on his end. So Councillor Reitman, I think you might have some closing comments. Why don't you make those? And if we can get Mr. Lister's audio working, we can bring him in after you're done.
Yes, absolutely. And I wanted to just thank everybody that's involved in heritage in Barrie. I definitely have to thank my committee, Heritage Barrie. They're a real hardworking group. Councillor Harris is part of that. He can testify to that. A very hardworking and very knowledgeable group of people, as well as the staff that support the committee. Excellent work done by all. I can tell you too that if you have a building that is elderly, and if you know of one that you think ought to be listed or designated historic, check out the city's website, and the ways to get it on the committee's agenda and get it listed are there as well for everybody to use. We have also the opportunity, you have the opportunity to nominate buildings for these awards or people for these awards. And you can do that at any time. So just shoot staff an email and you can get involved in that. Tonight we saw buildings that were in wards 1 and 2. That should be no surprise. But I'm sure that we have buildings that are worthy of protection and worthy of honor in a lot of other wards as well. So if you have, and I put this out to all members of council, but also the public, if you feel that there is a building that is worthy of getting an award or being listed, please let us know. And finally, thank you very much for all your attention, and it's always a great pleasure to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reitman. I also want to thank you, Councillor Jim Harris and Councillor Aylwin, as members of City Council for wards 1, 2, and 8. Yes, you're right, Councillor Reitman. There's a lot of our oldest areas, certainly oldest residential neighborhoods in the core of the city and along the lakeshore and in the old East End. But there are, in fact, just as you say, heritage buildings and buildings of significance to our history in every single ward of the city. And the growth of these awards and the growth of the number of property owners who are choosing to list their properties really speaks to the value that the community puts on heritage. So thank you and congratulations, of course, to each of the award recipients. We're very fortunate to have many of these beautiful and historically significant buildings from earlier years, from the early days of Barrie, Allendale, and Shanty Bay, so well preserved for future generations. And my special thanks to the three groups. Barrie today is telling me stories I have never heard before about the history of our city, and they're showing their love for our community in the research, the photography, and bringing that history to life. I can't, there aren't proper words to thank the Sir Robert Barrie project folks, but to bring him to life and bring so much of that history to life here in City Hall, and to use City Hall as a little bit of a display opportunity, a way to bring that to people. That's wonderful too. And of course, those two paintings, they mentioned, of course, the dragon, Sir Robert Barrie ship, but the HMCS Barrie, that other painting that you've seen there, which of course was part of World War II and named for our city, really wonderful. And last but certainly not least, the Regimental Museum, one of, I think, the second oldest public structure in the city after the jail. And to have a regimental museum, volunteers all associated with our regiment that continue to maintain that building and use it as a museum and present it to the public is really wonderful. So thank you to all. And despite how long that thank you was, I don't think we were able to get Mr. Lister's audio working, so we will say thank you to him. Mr. Lister, of course, is the head curator of the museum, and we thank him for that work. Okay, the second item tonight is a special recognition of shelter workers, and the Emergency Shelter and Homelessness Services Recognition Week, of course, was the last week of January, and took a little extra time to get the information and get everybody together for this call tonight. But I'm delighted tonight that we're joined by many of the executive directors of the organizations who have worked tirelessly throughout the pandemic under extremely difficult circumstances, and prior to the pandemic under always difficult circumstances to support our least fortunate, the marginalized community in Barrie, and sometimes marginalized community in Barrie. These organizations share a commitment to dignity and basic humanity, and that is something that we need a lot more of in the world today, and they practice this every single day. And so the people we're recognizing tonight, we've got the executive directors here to say a few words about what they do. I also have lists from each of them of the people who work and in a couple of cases also volunteer in the shelter system. And I'm only going to read their first names as the lists are long, but I at least wanted to give that shout out because every one of the individuals we're going to name tonight has done an incredibly difficult job, especially during a pandemic. And the very least City Council can do is say a collective thank you on behalf of our entire community. So that's how we're going to proceed tonight. And first we'll bring into the call, I see she's here already, Sarah Peddle, Executive Director of the David Busby Center. Probably needs no introduction, but Sarah, thank you for the work you do, and a few words for us, I think, tonight on the Busby Center and how you're continuing to serve our more vulnerable population. Go ahead.
Thank you to all of council for having me here tonight to recognize our staff. It has been a very trying time throughout the pandemic and of course before the pandemic, but definitely through all of the COVID situation, as well as an exacerbating housing crisis and toxic drug poisoning crisis. It has been extremely trying on our staff. And it's nice to see that council is recognizing their hard work. They are the front line to the front line, and we don't get to recognize them enough for all of the amazing work that they are doing. On some given days, we have multiple overdoses a day that they are reversing. They are trying to support people that are really struggling with trauma, and also just trying to get through the crisis, as well as trying to figure out where they're going to live once all of this ties up with the pandemic, because we're seeing the most numbers we've ever seen in shelter. Usually Busby Centre sits at about 75 a night. We are up over 140 a night that we are serving in shelter, as well as additional people that we're serving through our outreach teams. So our staff are just outstanding human beings. We can't express enough how amazing these individuals are to keep coming out every day and putting their lives on the line, sometimes to make sure that people are looked after. We are just so thankful for all of our staff and all of the staff of all of the different organizations, all the shelters, all the warming centers, all the food security organizations. Salvation Army staff create our meals for us every day. Our outreach team go and pick them up, and then again, our shelter staff are here daily. We just really are thankful that you are recognizing them, and we hope that this continues with the community recognizing this really important work that they are doing. I do want to have a bit of an honorable mention for our program coordinator, our program manager, Tara Osment, who has been here since the beginning of the pandemic. She actually was with Busby Centre and resigned because she was moving to Chatham to start a new adventure and new life, and then the pandemic hit and she couldn't leave. And she's been here supporting all of our staff through some really, really tough times, while she's also been taking on, losing a lot of people that she's worked with so hard in this community. So I just wanted to have a shout out to her and all the hard work that she's doing, but it does not negate all of the amazing workers that we have. And just thank you so much for the recognition for these amazing people.
Of course. Thank you, Sarah, for the work that you do, and personally to thank you on behalf of council and the community for your own leadership and advocacy all the way through the most difficult couple of years, but for so many years before that as well. Okay, I have a long list and I'm going to read everyone's first name, and hopefully some are watching, but to each and every one of these individuals, thank you for the work that you do through the David Busby Centre to support those who need help in our community. Anandini, Alexander, Alex, Allison again, Amy, and Amy, Andrea, Andrew, Anthony, and Tony, Ashley, Ayana, Bailey, Barbie, Bernadine, Brandon, Brittany, and Brittany too. Candace, Carl, Carrie, Cassidy, Chad, Chantel, Charita, Chris, Christina, Christopher, Crystal, Danielle, Daniel, Darren, Dave, David, Destiny, Devin, Alicia, Emily, Gina, Haley with 2 L's, Hannah, Harley, Holly, Isabella, Bella, Jacqueline, Jamie, Jace, Jeff, Jen, Jennifer, Jessica, and Jessica again, Jessica with a K, Josh, Juby, Judica, Carolyn, Carrie, Carla, Catherine, Kelly, Kent, Keosha, Laurel, Kevin again, Kim, Kurt, Lacey, Mackenzie, Kenzie, Madeline, Mateo, Melissa, Michelle, and Michelle too, both Mikes, Maloney, Misty, Natalie Ann, Nagusi, Nikki, O'Neill, PJ, Rachel, Brianne, Rebecca, and her friend Rebecca, Riel, Ryan, Samantha, Sam, Sarah and Sarah, as well as Sarah with an H, Celine, Shaniva, Steph, Stephen, Tara and Tara, Tara with an H, Tasha as well, Tatum, Tatiana, Thomas, Tracy, Trevor, Vanessa, the other Vanessa, Whitney, and Will. Thank you all for what you do for the David Busby Centre. Thanks again, Sarah, for being here tonight. Sarah mentioned in her remarks that the Salvation Army Bayside Mission is currently preparing meals for those in the hotel shelter dinners. And the Salvation Army Bayside Mission of course, itself has its own residents, but serves the community in meal preparation and meals out to the community that they have had to shift and deliver lunch and dinner through remote methods and different meal prep. And they've pivoted to deal with the pandemic in that way as well. Major Watkinson, staff couldn't be here tonight, but she has provided, because she's working at the shelter, but she's provided a short statement. The Salvation Army has been part of the city of Barrie since 1883, 139 years. Throughout our history, there's always been volunteers and staff dedicated to meeting the basic needs of the community. This has never been so evident as over the last 2 years of the pandemic. The staff at the Bayside Mission Center have shown their commitment and personal strength in handling all the challenges they've faced. The shelter staff continue to support each individual that comes through the door with more than just a bed. They have been a listening ear and encouragement and a strength during these uncertain times. The cooks have been rock stars in preparing, packaging, and serving the growing number of meals to the community, residents, and other shelters. The meals have doubled in the last 4 years, but our number of staff has stayed the same. And the hidden custodial staff that work tirelessly to keep all areas of our building clean and disinfected are extremely appreciated and not often noticed as they work their way through the building. All staff that continue to give their all to this work, all staff that continue to give their all to this work continue to impress me every day, as not only are they putting themselves at risk at times, but many have made personal sacrifices of staying away from family in order to work at the shelter. As many of these staff continue to pick up extra shifts to ensure that their needs are met. These individuals are amazing. And so to the staff of the Salvation Army Bayside Mission, thank you. And they are Alexis, Alan, Amanda, Aisha, Caitlin, Cecilia, Emily, Emma, Esther, Jade, James, Jason, Jessica, Joshua, Julio, Krista, Lois, Martin, Natalie, Nelson, Paige, and Samika. Thank you all for what you do. Next tonight, we have the Gilbert Center, and we have Sarah Tilley, Harm Reduction Manager, who's with us tonight. Sarah, welcome to City Council. And would you like to say a few words about the Gilbert Center?
Yeah, sorry, just one sec. Hopefully you can hear and see me. Perfect.
You can. Go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening, and thanks for having us here tonight. As Mayor Lehman has said, my name is Sarah Tilley, and I'm the Harm Reduction Manager at the Gilbert Center for Social and Support Services. For those of you that may not know, the Gilbert Center is an aid service organization, and as such, we provide a variety of different services throughout Simcoe and Muskoka. This includes harm reduction programming, HIV and hepatitis C support, 2S LGBTQ programming, both for youth and seniors, as well as our Safer Spaces programming, which aims to support businesses and organizations in their work of creating safer spaces for queer and trans individuals and communities throughout Simcoe and Muskoka. At the Gilbert Center, a large component of our harm reduction work includes community outreach, and it's through this that we've been able to create and strengthen partnerships that will hopefully continue to grow well beyond this pandemic. While nothing about the pandemic or the opioid epidemic and poor drug policies have been good or easy in any way, it's been beautiful and humbling to see the amount of people who've stepped up and come together in an effort to support our communities. While our stance at the Gilbert Center is that we do not look down on or view people who use drugs as inherently negative, we know that people who feel loved, supported, and safe often use differently than those who do not. To this end, in addition to our outreach that is able to support our unhoused neighbors by providing information to shelter and housing referrals, it's been a privilege to support the Warming Center led by the John Howard Society. It's a great honor to be recognized among the shelter providers here tonight and supporting our unhoused neighbors, and we look forward to continuing this work in the months and years to come. Thanks for the recognition.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for the work that you do and for what the Gilbert Center does. And to Jerry Croto, who's not here today, thank you for your leadership as well in providing these services out to our community in a difficult time. In specific, Jerry's given me 6 names to mention of staff at the Gilbert Center: Christine F., Christine N., Jackie, Nick, Sarah, of course, and Silas. Thank you to the 6 of you and to all others who support this organization for what you do in our community. Next tonight, we want to recognize the good people at Youth Haven. And if we could bring Lucy Gowers, the Executive Director of Youth Haven, and oh, there she is. Hi, Lucy.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I just wanted to thank and recognize everyone whose contributions have made a positive difference in the work that Youth Haven does. It's been 2 years since our world was unexpectedly turned upside down. In that time, I've witnessed an incredible amount of passion and dedication towards all youth who bravely make their way to Youth Haven, seeking our help and support. Our staff's commitment to our mission has grown even stronger as we continue to support youth experiencing homelessness or at risk of becoming homeless. They provide youth with every opportunity and support to meet their immediate needs while providing them with the necessary tools to help them access housing, education, healthcare, employment, and so much more. Thank you for recognizing our staff, for being so dedicated, courageous, and selfless, for showing up every day in these extraordinary times, knowing the risk they faced, for performing their work with excellence for those we serve, and for supporting our youth as well as each other. Yes, the pandemic has changed our work, but it has not kept us from doing it. And despite the effects of the pandemic, our staff has continued to work hard on behalf of the youth who rely on our emergency shelter, our transitional housing program, and our outreach services. Throughout these difficult times and unexpected changes and challenges, our team continued to respond to critical needs. They had to be ready for anything. They carried out the essential work of our organization and made a profound difference in the lives of hundreds of youths in desperate need of help, hope, and care. Our team acted to ensure we were able to deliver our services in a safe and sustainable way for youth and staff alike. They came together to cover shifts, prepare meals, shop for groceries, answer phone calls, emails, clean, do laundry, whatever it took to support the youth in their care. And as you know, the situation was changing by the moment, but they continued to do their best to adapt to these changes. They implemented safety procedures and ensured that proper precautions were being taken by all. Our outreach services were delivered virtually by our outreach team. They allowing us to continue to engage with vulnerable youth and who may otherwise have been disconnected from mainstream services and supports. Through the lockdowns, they were able to establish supportive relationships, provide counseling, advice, advocacy, and referral services, and when possible, help youth access necessary services and supports that help them move back in with their families or into permanent housing. They actively engaged within the communities they served by raising awareness about homelessness and provided education about how to prevent it in the future. They provided meals, food, and care packages as needed. I am extremely proud to be part of a remarkable organization working to end youth homelessness in our community. No amount of praise will ever be enough to express our gratitude for the work our staff continues to do. But I am pleased and grateful that you have chosen to honor them for their dedication, passion, and commitment to our youth. It is because of them, after all, that young lives are changed completely and forever. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those words, Lucy, and for the work that you and your staff and everyone associated with Youth Haven do for young people who need that helping hand, and for whom you are just a lifeline at so many difficult times. And thank you for all the changes you've had to deal with over the past 2 years, especially. To your staff, we can only say thank you on behalf of a grateful community, and those staff are Alma, Anne, Christine, Cynthia, Danielle, Aaron, France, Jillian, Jennifer, Jessica, Catherine, Kim, Laura, Louise, Micheline, Natalie, Nicole, Raven, Stacy, Taylor, and Tyra. Thank you all so much for the work that you do. Okay, we will now ask Megan Chambers to join us, who, oh, and there she is, from the Elizabeth Fry Society of Simcoe Muskoka. Megan, welcome to City Council. Thank you so much for the work that you do at eFry, and would you like to say a few words?
Thank you very much, Mayor Lehman and members of council. Thank you for having us here and taking the time and the space to honor and celebrate our shelter workers. It's hard to articulate the amazing work of our shelter workers, but I will certainly do my best. The Elizabeth Fry Society Shelter Program, known as Joyce Cope House, moved its operations on March 22nd, 2020 from our home location into a hotel as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The response was meant to be temporary in an attempt to keep shelter participants and staff as safe as possible from the contraction of the virus. Almost 2 years later, we've expanded our team and bed capacity from providing emergency shelter to 25 women and gender diverse individuals to between 65 and 70 each and every night. Our workers provide a range of trauma-informed support based on individualized needs, from safety planning and crisis management to reintegration after incarceration, harm reduction, and housing support. In the last 2 years, our operations adapted and so did our shelter workers. They're not only responding to individualized needs, they're responding to a pandemic and riding the waves of outbreaks and risking their own health in the meantime. They're also responding to the fallout of an affordable housing crisis and a toxic drug crisis. As mentioned by Sarah Peddle, our shelter workers are often the front line to the first responders, tending to medical emergencies and overdoses at an alarming rate. They're providing life-saving CPR and supportive services to individuals accessing shelter, people that they care about deeply and people they often spend more time with than their own families. Our staff work tirelessly, celebrating triumphs with our participants during times of joy and grieving with them and for the ones that we've lost. Our staff show up every day with a shared mission to end chronic homelessness in our community and to support some of the most vulnerable neighbors with dignity and respect in the meantime. This week, our team experienced an on-site loss. Together, we grieved and held space for one another as participants called our shelter workers family. Shelter work has never been easy, certainly something that I wouldn't define as easy, but most recently it's been exceptionally hard. It takes very special and incredibly dedicated individuals to want to and to be able to do this work. As an executive director, I'm extremely proud of each and every one of them for their adaptability, their strength, their willingness, and their passion to show up each and every day. Thank you again for holding this space for our shelter workers. As all shelter workers in the city of Barrie and shelter providers, we've been working collaboratively for the last 2 years pretty closely and sharing the shared experiences that our frontline workers are going through. And I'm incredibly happy to see that they are being acknowledged on this level. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Megan, and for the work that you and the other shelter providers have done together. But in particular, I'm guessing from the background that both you and Sarah Peddle are still at work at this hour of night. Yeah, at the hotel, as you have been all the way along. There's no such thing as normal working hours, and there's no such thing as a single normal day. It is incredibly difficult work. It requires so much passion, commitment, and creativity at times, and just so much emotional labor, and especially to be caring for twice as many people as you were before the pandemic, as with Busby and with other organizations in our community. So thank you for what you do for your organization and to your staff. We, on behalf of the entire community, we want to say thank you for your work. And those staff are Allison, Amelia, Angelica, Ashley O, Ashley S, Bilge, Bonnie, Brandy, Brittany, Christine, Courtney, Dana, Debbie, Denise, Emily, Aaron, Hannah, Heather, Honey, Jenna, Jenica, Kim, Lee, Mallory, Rihanna, Rebecca, Sarah, Sharday, Sheila, Stephanie, Taylin, Taylor, Tracy Mick, Tracy M, Tracy W, Vanessa C, Vanessa W, and Victoria. Thank you all for the work you do in our community. And the final organization tonight that we're going to be recognizing is, of course, the John Howard Society of Simcoe Muskoka. And with us tonight is Susanna McCarthy, Executive Director. Susanna, welcome to City Council. Needless to say, thank you for the work that you and your organization do in Barrie. And would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. So the John Howard Society has been part of the Barrie community since 2007. In general, we work for human justice by supporting people whose lives are affected by our criminal justice system. We advocate for effective, just, and humane responses to crime and its causes. Our work builds safer communities through the use of evidence-based programming and services delivered across Ontario, from skills training to youth counseling for affected families and employment assistance for folks who are beginning a new life after incarceration. We promote practical, equitable policies, raising awareness of the root causes of crime and calling on Ontarians to share responsibility for addressing these causes. Within our criminal justice system, we advocate for the fair treatment of all. As the system evolves to reflect our changing society, we work to ensure that no one is left behind. Recently, we embarked on a warming project in Barrie. We're in no way experts in warming centers, but we saw a need in the community and we had a belief that we would be able to lend a hand in filling it. We wanted to minimize the drain on services such as EMS and law enforcement by providing a safe location where members of our community could come in, be warm, and access resources. Through much planning, work, and the support of City Council, we were able to launch the warming program in January. This program has led to the development of a partnership between a number of service providers and the community, and it's become an illustration of what is really possible when a community bands together with a collective vision. Each day, we see the impact of this shared vision as people come through our doors to access support, warmth, and resources. In the 3 weeks we've been operating, we've had over 300 visits between our two warming centers. We've also watched the community form in the warming centers and have seen many participants develop a sense of pride and even a sense of ownership over the programming. Participants are eager to help and support and ensure everyone feels welcome. I want to extend my sincere thanks to the residents of Barrie, our collaborating partners, City Council, the County of Simcoe, for their ongoing support of our unsheltered neighbors and this warming project. We would not have this level of success without the incredible collaboration, compassion, and support we've received. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Susanna, for stepping up and for the creativity and energy that you brought to efforts this year, but to the work you've done and the advocacy you do as the ED of the John Howard Society of Simcoe Muskoka. Thank you on behalf of the community, and especially, of course, to the staff of the John Howard Society. And those staff are Brittany, Carlos, Chad, Charita, Christine, Darren, Haley, Jesse, Carly, Nancy, Natalie, Rebecca, Sue, and Travis. Thank you all so much. It goes without saying that this work that's done in our community by shelter workers is among the most difficult kind of work, the most trying and emotionally heavy work that you can imagine. And yet we have so many people, as we listen to those lists tonight, so many individuals who do this work to support our least fortunate neighbors. But the last comment I wanted to make is that we are incredibly lucky in our community to be served by the 6 leaders of these organizations. And they got to say a few words tonight, but having worked with them in various capacities over the years, I can tell you our community is so fortunate to have leaders that are inspiring to their staff, who have pivoted with all of the things that are thrown their way, who constantly find a way to make it work. And foremost, always foremost in their mind are the people they serve. And for that, as mayor, I am hugely grateful, and I'm sure you are as members of council, and our residents are as well. And so to Susanna, Megan, Lucy, Jerry Croto at Gilbert, Major Stephanie Watkinson, and of course, Sarah Petal, thank you for the work you do in leadership in this community. Councillor Natalie Harris, did you want to say something?
Sorry, thank you, Mayor Lehman, for letting me do this. I just wanted to say a quick thank you as well to Ryan's Hope So they are an organization purely volunteer, and Christine Naylor and her husband Tom have been providing breakfasts, I believe since last winter, so over a year now, to the homeless every morning. They also do a night shift where they drive around and try to fill in the gaps where other services might not have the hands to do it that night. And Christine and Tom also volunteer in the warming centers and are kind of a hub in the community for collections of donations, and just an amazing advocacy and a voice in memory of their son, Ryan, who died because of the toxic drug crisis. So thank you so much for letting me mention them as well. They're new, I guess, in the city, and it would be nice to make them a name that we know just as well as all the other services because of all the hard work that they do. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. And yes, it should be noted, of course, we didn't come anywhere near to recognizing all the organizations that assist the least fortunate in our community. For example, the Barrie Food Bank, and they have dozens and indeed hundreds of volunteers and dozens of staff doing the work too. So while we're able to recognize our shelter workers tonight and the two outreach organizations that work with them, there are so many other great organizations in our community that we're thankful for as well. Okay, we will move on now to the business of council, and that is committee reports. And we have two deputation requests on those committee reports. The first was an emergency deputation request received just at the last minute here from Ms. Kathy Colbatch, as that request was received well after the printing of the agenda. A majority vote in favor to hear the deputation is required. So I'll call the question. Those in favor of hearing the emergency deputation? Okay, nobody is opposed. Ms. Colbatch will go second. And first, we have Jennifer Van Gennep on behalf of the Simcoe County Alliance to End Homelessness concerning motions 22G6 and 22G7, which is the City of Barrie official plan and the Municipal Comprehensive Review. So if we can have Ms. Van Gennep in the call, there she is. Ms. Van Gennep, welcome to council, and in accordance with procedural bylaw, a maximum of 5 minutes is permitted for your deputation. Sorry, Councilor Morales, did you have something?
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Just like to declare potential pecuniary interest on the deputation. Same reasons as last time. My family and I own property, and I believe the subjects are specific to affordable housing targets. So for prudency, I'll just exclude myself from the deputation.
Okay, Madam Clerk, is Councilor Morales' conflict been recorded?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it has.
Thank you very much. Ms. Van Gennep, welcome to council, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm commenting on behalf of the Scatterberry chapter. We wanted to take this last opportunity to thank city staff for encouraging our engagement through the long process of writing this official plan over the last 3 years, and their willingness to meet with us, answer questions, and consider our suggestions. We also wish to thank council for your increasing interest in housing affordability over the course of this process, including in the affordable housing targets of the official plan. We were pleasantly surprised to hear that the amendment to increase the affordable housing target in the official plan from 10% to 15% passed last week. And so we wanted to acknowledge that important change and express our support for adopting the official plan as amended. We were especially encouraged to learn that the decision to increase the target was based on a desire to tie it to the actual demand for affordable housing based on census data. We wanted to also share with you a project that might be of interest happening right now at the University of British Columbia, which is funded through the National Housing Strategy and the CMHC Housing Supply Challenge. The Housing Assessment Resource Tools Project, also called HART, is developing standardized ways to measure and address housing need. They measure housing need by income group at the 20th, 40th, 60th, and 80th percentiles, and they are currently piloting these tools with 15 governments, including Hamilton, Ottawa, and the Peel, York, Halton, and Durham regions in this phase of their project. This could be a promising tool for here in Barrie as well. Either way, we are pleased to see a shift towards setting targets based on household income data. These types of calculations then allow us to measure and set targets based on the number of affordable units compared to the number of low-income households as a ratio, which is a much more useful measurement of our progress than the one we currently use. Good city planning includes housing along the full income spectrum of the people who call that city home. This official plan gives staff much more robust policy tools to manage housing affordability needs. I also don't want to leave out that this OP also moves us toward public infrastructure with better, more reliable access to public washrooms, drinking water, and warming and cooling centers, which will benefit vulnerable and marginalized populations as we work to build a more resilient city where everyone has a safe and affordable place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Van Gennep, and for bringing those to our attention as we talk about this issue at Council tonight. Any questions for the Deputant, Members Council? Councillor Congo.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Ms. Van Gennep. And thank you for sharing the, I believe it was referred to as the HEART tool that's being piloted. So keen to know if you're aware of any timelines around the progress of that piece, if that's anything that will be reported on over the next year. And I'm asking that too, because I'd love to hear about that, and I'll try, I welcome any information directly about that. But as SCADA, in my understanding, is connected to Simcoe County, and as I sit on the Human Services, is that information also moving up as a point of interest through the structure to the County of Simcoe?
I haven't shared it with them myself, but we certainly can. There's a link that I can share with you afterwards if that's helpful, and then you can share it with whoever you think might benefit from it. But as far as this is phase 1, and then based on the success of this, funding would be, future funding is tied to the success of this phase, and then, but there are plans to add to this tool, these resource tools.
Great, thank you for bringing that forward. I'm personally, I'll look into that and connect with you, but also an awareness of maybe the pathways that information can come forward both to the county and back to City of Barrie would be great.
That's great, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Congo. Any other questions of the Deputant? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Van Gennep, thank you for your comments tonight.
Thank you.
Our other Deputant is Kathy Colbatch. If we can bring Ms. Kathy Colbatch into the call.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman and members of Council.
Sorry, hang on just a sec. Councillor Morales, you're good to, I don't think you have to declare separately on the separate deputation. So as long as you stay out of the meeting, you're good, you're covered.
Oh, so yeah, thanks, Mayor Lehman. I just wanted to ask, I don't know the contents of this deputation, so what would you recommend, that I sit for the deputation and if it errs on content, leave the deputation, or just write off the deputation from the beginning?
I can't advise you on a conflict, Councillor Morales, but I think you declared on the first one, you can stay out for the second one, and unless you were intending to ask questions, I don't think you're missing any debate or anything anyway.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Colbatch, welcome to City Council, and you have up to 5 minutes for your deputation.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman and members of Council and planning staff. I think some of you may have missed me at the public meeting, the Planning Committee last week. I did watch that 4-hour session, by the way, and was impressed with the discussion that went on between the council members, and a lot of great questions came out of it, and a lot of discussion, some potential amendments, and I was pleased to see that, because it tells me as a resident that you're working hard for your constituents. I didn't really put together a deputation, a written deputation, but I did have some comments, because I think in general, when you look at the fact that here we are, you're ready to pass this document that's a beast, that has been worked on for years. I think it speaks volumes that there are not many people doing deputations, whether it's in support of or in opposition of something. And it is massive. And I feel for council members trying to understand and read through all of it, if you've even had a chance to do that. There's the actual, the official plan document, the policies, there's the urban design guidelines, the comprehensive bylaw review, which we haven't seen yet, which is coming, and also the maps, even the maps. I mean, through all the draft changes that have happened to keep on target with what's changed and what hasn't changed. And then on top of that, the changes that occurred, and we had to pivot when the accessibility and affordability, more homes, more choices came in. Have we covered all that in the official plan? So I just wanted to comment as a resident, you know, I wasn't really prepared to talk tonight, but I just felt the need to talk because I know nobody else ever does when it comes to these things. So I'd like to thank the planning staff, Michelle Banfield and all of her staff, because I know it has been a lot of hard work. And I must say that she looks very enthusiastic at every planning committee, public meeting, and provides, you know, good answers and has always been very responsive to me personally. So I'd like to say a huge thank you to her for that. And then my only other comments really are maybe in relation to heights and stories, clarification on heights and stories. I think that's very confusing throughout the official plan in terms of when you are talking the zoning bylaws, you're talking meters, but when you're talking throughout the policy, you're talking stories. And that, you know, that has been an issue at public meetings in the past, people trying to figure out how many stories versus, you know, how many meters. Low density, as I understand it, is up to four stories, not necessarily 4 stories. Medium is between 4 and 12 stories, unless I've missed a point where that was changed. And then high density, there is no cap on high density planning of the tall towers. And I would really like to see something where we could put in actual meters and cap it, as opposed to just leaving it to be decided by the planning staff and or council. So from a resident's perspective, we know that throughout the city of Barrie, no matter whether it's on a corridor or a gateway or wherever we think we have the best land use that we can use, that there's a cap, and that we're not always in public meetings having to say, well, I think 39 stories is too high in this neighborhood that transitions onto a residential neighborhood. So that would be my comment on that. And I guess from, you know, the OP's perspective, you know, one of the things as a resident, I think that I would comment on as well is that, you know, this is a document that is huge and it changes. And although we say we want to put a 2-year moratorium once this is approved by the province, which will take several months to happen, you know, it's sort of taking away the ability for residents, if you will, to come forward and talk about potential changes. I'd like to see, obviously, as I'm a tree person, and tree canopy I think is very important. And I'm not sure that we've focused enough on the tree canopy. So I'm not sure if there's anything we can do in relation to maybe making a change. And I know that we're going to be working on potentially a private tree bylaw, or at least investigating it. But we are losing way too much tree canopy in the city of Barrie. And there are reports from the Ontario government that actually indicate and show where Barrie is in that and how much we've lost. And I think maybe that's probably it. Obviously, parking, the built form in neighborhoods could be an issue, because honestly, I think, and this is my personal opinion from planning, is that I think when we look at putting townhouses into existing neighborhoods, whether it's a historic neighborhood or just in a well-established neighborhood with bungalows or 2 stories, I think that, you know, townhouses don't necessarily fit into those neighborhoods, because what you're doing now is setbacks with parking, and the parking is ending up on the front lawn and there's very little green space. So that goes back to green space in our environment. And I think those are, and maybe one other comment is that we seem to be allowing demolition of perfectly good built form stock in our existing neighborhoods, i.e., where investors are purchasing many properties and tearing down perfectly good stock, where people are living in affordable housing, that you know, the rents are reasonable And, I don't know how you deal with that through the official plan or the affordability aspect of it, but I don't think that we should be demolishing or allowing for demolition of good built form. If it's demolition by neglect, that's one thing, but hopefully we have some stronger measures in the official plan when it comes to demolition control, but not just historic neighborhoods, but anywhere. Because it's housing stock, and what price are we paying if we are removing existing affordable housing stock? So I thank you for your time.
Sorry, you're just going to.
I was just going to say, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your time.
I did give you several extra minutes, but I got to get you to wrap up. Thank you so much for your deputation, members of council. Any questions for Ms. Kolbach? Okay. If not, then Ms. Kolbach, thank you very much for being here and for your comments tonight. That completes our deputations. We'll move on to tax applications. Deputy Mayor Ward, do you have a tax application?
I do. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, the list of applications submitted to council for the cancellation, reduction, or addition of taxes dated February 14th, 2022, submitted by the Treasurer in the amount of $15,521.88 be approved.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that the list of applications submitted to council for the cancellation, reduction, or addition of taxes dated February 14th, 2022, submitted by the Treasurer in the amount of $15,521.88 be approved. Madam Clerk, have we received any objections to this list of applications for cancellation, reduction, or additions, not addictions, additions to taxes? Nobody's addicted to taxes, notwithstanding that gets thrown at us from time to time. Madam Clerk?
No, Mayor Lehman, we have not, but we would also probably like to check with the Treasurer, just in case.
I think we'll do that too. Mr. Treasurer, have we had any objections to this list of applications?
No, we have not, Mayor Lehman.
Okay, thank you very much. Members of council, any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor, please indicate. Anybody opposed? None. That carries. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Ward. We have no communication matters on tonight's agenda. It takes us to the committee reports. Deputy Mayor Ward, go ahead.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Planning Committee report dated February 1st, 2022, as circulated, be received.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson. That the Planning Committee report dated February 1st, 2022, as circulated, be received. This is to receive the 3 public meeting reports from Planning Committee on the first. Comments or questions on Section A or the Planning Committee report? Okay, seeing none. Those in favor, please indicate. Any opposed? None. That carries. It's just to be received, of course. Okay, Deputy Mayor Ward, General Committee from the 7th.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section A of the General Committee report dated February 7th, 2022, as circulated, be received.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section A of the General Committee report dated February 7th, as circulated, be received. It's to receive the report of the Finance and Corporate Services Committee from January 24th. Comments or questions? It's to be received. Seeing none, those in favor? Any opposed? None. That carries. Section B, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section B of the General Committee report dated February 7th, 2022, as circulated, be adopted.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section B of the General Committee report dated February 7th, as circulated, be adopted. These were the consent items. They are the Stormwater Climate Action Fund, Transit Service Guidelines, the Internal Audit Status Report, the Fraud and Wrongdoing Program Activity, and the summary of the Internal Audit Activity, as well as Internal Audit's Work Plan. We have a confidential matter related to affordable housing. We had the Recreation and Sport Community Grant Program Guidelines, an invitation to Barrie Families Unite to come make a presentation, and the extension of the appointment of our town crier. Those were the consent items. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor of Section B, please indicate. Is anyone opposed? None. That carries. Thank you. Section C, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section C of the General Committee report dated February 7th, 2022, as circulated, be received.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section C of the General Committee report from February 7th, as circulated, be received. It's to receive the report on the presentation of the Market Precinct Task Force. The motion is the next section. Comments or questions on Section C? Seeing none, those in favor of receiving Section C, Anybody opposed? None. That carries. Section D, please. Deputy Mayor Ward.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section D of the General Committee report dated February 7th, 2022 is circulated to be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Rob Thompson, that Section D of the General Committee report dated February 7th as circulated be adopted. This is the motion on the Market Precinct Task Force. And Deputy Mayor Ward, I believe you have an amendment.
I do. Moved by myself, seconded by Mayor Lehman, that motion 22G026 of Section D of the General Committee report dated February 7th, 2022 be amended by adding the following words to the end of paragraph 1 with the goal of opening to the public in 2024, by deleting the first paragraph of item number 3 and replacing it with that the city hire either a contract position or a consultant with a budget of $100,000 in 2022 funded from the reinvestment reserve, and that consideration of additional funding be presented to council in subsequent budgets. 2, 3, by adding the following words in paragraph 3A after prepare a plan and recommend the prioritization and timelines associated with the items B to J with the remaining paragraphs the same. And 4, by adding the following paragraph that staff in the Recreation and Culture Services Department in consultation with other city departments work with the Barrie Farmers Market on opportunities to hold pop-up market days at city recreation and community centers, libraries, and park locations with funding of up to $25,000 to be allocated from the reinvestment reserve to fund any city-related costs and to assist the Barrie Farmers Market in marketing the pop-ups if they proceed. And I can speak to that if you want.
Okay, so we have an amendment. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by myself. I won't go through all of it. The material changes or additions are adding with a goal of opening to the public in 2024 to the first paragraph, and then a wording change that I believe was recommended by staff with regards to recommending and prioritizing the items in paragraph 3, and then funding of up to $25,000 to support the Barrie Farmers Market to do pop-ups around the city in 2022, pop-up markets. Deputy Mayor Ward, go ahead.
The first amendments are basically tidying it up, setting the target date when we're going to open. The second paragraph is to want to make clear that the $100,000 is not going to bring everything that we want in terms of planning for the market. It's going to take a lot more money than that. This is just the beginning phase. It's going to obviously cost more than that to do a lot of the planning work for the market in future years. This is just renaming the paragraphs. And we heard from the farmers market last week that they were interested in sort of preparing the ground for their move and preparing pop-ups around the city of Barrie. And maybe Mayor Lehman, who initiated this particular motion, can speak to this.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Mayor Ward. In speaking with the Barrie Farmers Market, I think you members of council heard from them as part of the presentation last week that they are very much of a growth mindset. They want to grow the number of vendors and the time that the farmers market is open by going to additional days, so that by the time this building is ready in a couple of years, they're even bigger, even better, and operating on more than just Saturday mornings, but other days of the week as well, to make better use of the building and bring the market opportunity to more people. One of the steps that they would like to take to help get there is to start doing pop-up markets around the city. And I can't think of a better way to introduce them to residents who might not otherwise get downtown to the farmers market on a Saturday morning than to have a pop-up market in our rec centers or our library or a park or other locations as determined with BFM. It's early days yet. We don't know where, we don't know when. That will be up to them. But I thought the idea was a very good one, and I thought I would ask council whether you would support a little bit of funding. A lot of those costs could be staff related in terms of, preparing the parking lot or the parking closures or assisting the farmers market otherwise with logistics like washrooms. But I anticipate a chunk of that funding could also be spent on joint promotion of those pop-up markets. And this would just be another thing that can help delight our residents and bring the Barrie Farmers Market across the city to different locations in other parts of the city. So that was why that paragraph of the amendment. On the amendment, Councillor Kungl and then Councillor Morales.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lehman, to yourself as a seconder of the motion and to Deputy Mayor Barrie Ward. I'm aligned to the amendments. I was hoping to maybe have you speak a bit more to the intention of number 7 around different areas. And if there's a timeline related to that, realistically around the $25,000 being available and then enabling it. So is it hand in hand? Because we're coming up to the growing season. We're having great conversations already, even around how to leverage the existing City of Barrie Community Garden program. Some of our gardens, knowing that we've even expanded last year for 3 more, have access to water and other opportunities, but also are a great place where we're trying to look at how do we leverage what people are growing in those gardens and to support giving back when sometimes we have those bumper yields and we're seeing, and even residents are walking through our park spaces that have these garden beds and they're trying to find an easy way to donate food back if they've grown more than what they can use. So I'm assuming, of course, the program is involved in that, but would love to see that this is something that's intended for this year if possible, or is there a different type of access to the $25,000 that we need to appreciate that is or is not available this budget?
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure what your question was, Councillor Kungle.
So I'm reading the new paragraph 7 with funding up to $25,000 to assist in pop-ups. Is the intention that those pop-ups could happen this year and that the money is available?
Yes, sorry,
in year?
yes.
I probably could have been more brief, but you know,
Sorry,
I like to
no,
very...
the intention, I believe the BFM hopes to do that this summer. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay. Thank you for that. I won't look at making an amendment, just wanted to clarify because I'd love to see that really leveraged this year and to create some momentum there.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Councillor Kungle. Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. The only thing I'll say is for members that are looking at, obviously there's really good intentions in the amendments, but if for members who obviously the money is an important factor, it's up to this amount. It can actually be less. And what I mean by that is the BIA themselves has applied for a lot of Main Street funding through different levels of government and has actually been successful. So I will say now, I know staff are always working hard at applying at every single source of funding possible, but since the BIA has been successful, the BI can be more than happy to share their best practices. So the City of Barrie might, again, there's different criteria. If it doesn't qualify for the 100,000 because it's labor, it might qualify for the 25,000 because it's pop-up market days. And Main Street funding aims to activate Main Streetscapes, et cetera, et cetera. So it's up to this amount, could be lower in practice. So just one little thing of encouragement, but I'll be in favor.
Thanks, Councillor Morales. Others wish to comment on the amendment? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the, oh, sorry, Councillor McCann, go ahead.
Sorry, Mayor Lehman, and I'm just, maybe a point of clarification. Is it, what reserve is the 25 grand coming from? And I'm not making a huge deal about this, but just more curious. I didn't catch that.
Reinvestment, the reinvestment reserve.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so it's not the community benefit reserve. Okay. Yeah, I'm just,
actually it is. Sorry, Councillor McCann, the staff renamed the reserve. It used to be called community benefit. It's now called reinvestment. Staff decided to rename it in this year's budget. So there you go. It actually is what we used to call the community benefit reserve.
Yeah, then you know what? I'm just, I'm supportive of this, just to be clear. But in your circulation list at 12 o'clock today, you just said we want to spend $5 million of the remainder of that fund. So I just want to make sure we're not overspending that fund. I know it's 25 grand and it's going to be in staff salaries. Anyway, so that was just maybe a detail that maybe we could get at. So I just want to make sure we're not overspending that fund. We do have some other funds, other projects that we're using that money for, is number one. And number two, just getting back to like what's new here, because we've already approved 100 grand, we've already approved the pop-ups. So what's new in this amendment is that you want to have a deadline of 2/4, and you want to have pop-ups this year and spend the money this year. I don't have your amendment in front of me, so that's why I'm a little I'm going back and forth here a little quickly.
Yep, the amendment should be on your email. I'll let Deputy Mayor Ward speak to the first 3 paragraphs, then I can speak to the 4th one.
Okay.
Ahead,
yeah, that is it. We're the amendments are establishing a time when we're going to open the market, and making it clear that the 100,000 is not going to cover the full cost of preparing them for the market plan. And yeah, I'm not sure if that was your question.
Well, I'm just seeing in the original motion, like what's new. We already approved the 100, we already approved the pop-ups, and what we didn't approve is a timeline. So I like that, is the 24th. And
And the last one was the $25,000 to help the farmers market establish pop-ups around the city this year.
Right. Okay. And then, okay, well, and I guess just, $25,000. I don't need an answer right now, but I just want to make that a note of that I just hope we're not overspending that, or maybe I should have got an answer now since it's city council.
Yeah, sure. Let's ask the treasurer.
Yeah.
Mr. Miller, is there enough fund in the reinvestment reserve in 2022 to support the additional $25,000?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to members of council, yes, there is. Finance can do an updated schedule for you and circulate that to you tomorrow to let you see how much is in there. But there is enough to carry the 25,000.
Okay. Thanks. Good work, guys.
Thanks, Councilor McCann. Any other questions or comments on the amendment? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the amendment? Anybody opposed? None. That carries. On the main motion, section B, comments or questions on the precinct task force, market precinct task force? Okay, I'm just, Deputy Mayor Ward, did you want to speak? Okay, I wanted to just thank again the members of the task force and in fact the members of all three task forces. We are going to thank them more properly and individually after outside of the meeting, but I do want to publicly recognize again all of the work that went into this over the course of 8 months and the exciting plans that are here. So with that, I will call the question on section D, the market precinct task force. Those in favor or any opposed? None. That carries unanimously. Great work, Deputy Mayor Ward and task force members. Thank you. And that brings us to the general committee report from February 7th. Sorry, February 8th. We're planning committee now, February 8th. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson. The section A of the planning committee report dated February 8, 2022 is circulated be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section A, the planning committee report dated February 8th, 2022 is circulated be adopted. This is the proposed official plan, municipal comprehensive review, the affordable housing motion. Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'd like to declare a real and direct pecuniary interest on this amendment as it deals with affordable housing targets that would affect me directly, my parents and I's financial situation. So as such, I won't be voting on this matter.
Okay, Madam Clerk, has Councillor Morales's conflict been recorded?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it has.
Thank you very much. On the motion, section A, any comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of section A, please indicate. And I am as well. That carries unanimously.
Sorry, Mayor Lehman, I've got comments on this actually.
Oh, you held up your yes card.
I'm not sure if you can't see my screen or not, but.
Sorry, yeah, you held up your yes card, not the speaking card. Go ahead, Councilman McCann, make your comments. Yeah, that one. There you go.
My bad. Yeah, I do want to maybe make some comments on this. I will be supportive, but I did want to maybe just echo and reframe my comments from last week. You know, I do have an issue increasing from 10% to 15%. And I do realize that this council isn't really aligned with the way I'm thinking. And it's not that I don't want more affordable housing. That's quite the opposite. I definitely want more and want to help more. I just have a real issue with this model. And I guess the issue I have with this model is I understand our outcome. We want to have more people that can afford properties, whatever income bracket they're in. Obviously, it's under a certain bracket where they need assistance for affordable housing. And I just don't know if this amendment from last week, you know, to increase it from 10 to 15% is going to get us there. And I just felt strongly enough that I wanted to say my opinion. So if the mayor and council will give me maybe 3 or 4 minutes, I'll make it as quick as possible. You know, last week I made some, comments that like, I just look at things really practically, right? And I have a very clean line and I do lots of research and talk to people that are actually, in the ground and actually spending money and actually involved in this on a day-to-day basis. And the fact of the matter is, if you've got a unit of 100 people, 100 units, and we're asking to go from 10 to 15%, there's a real issue that the builder is just going to take any extra cost that the city is going to demand that he spends, and he's going to put it on the other 85 units. And most likely those units are going to be family people. They're going to be residents in our city that are raising families, and they're in these units, and they're the ones that are going to get taxed. I don't mean taxed by the city. I mean have a higher cost to the units, and that is an experience that is happening across the country. Secondly, we're going to have these extra units that are going to be available, and we don't have a guarantee that the people that we want to actually be in these units are actually going to be able to be in these units, because we have no system in place where we can track this and we can regulate this, where we can have these people in these units, right? And so that is a big concern to me. And I think everybody on this council wants to do 10 times more than we are doing, but this is an issue that definitely needs to be dealt with higher governments, right? I don't believe that we're going to get where we want to go with this amendment. And so I just wanted to reiterate, that right now we're talking about builders, and if we can't attract builders to our city, then we're not building any units. So if we keep on putting more restriction and making it more expensive for the developers and the builders to build in this city, they're just not going to build in Barrie. They're going to go to many other cities that are a half an hour away from Barrie and build where other communities, other councillors are not putting so much expense and maybe red tape towards them developing in Barrie. And I said this last week, I'll say it again, builders right now, nobody knows what the market's going to be, right? We have new Canadians coming into our country that most likely will keep the cost of housing up, right? So that's, as a business case, a great thing. Maybe not so great for affordable housing. Building costs, they've been up, I believe, 20%, maybe hovering on 23%. There's no horizon that says that they're actually going to come down. Everyone speculates that they have to come down, but no one knows actually when. And if you just look at supply chain, if you look at how we're getting our materials in, that doesn't seem to be something that's going to happen in the near future. And then obviously labor cost. I think all sectors across all markets in Canada are having an issue with labor. So those three are major components when you're building homes and developing. And now we're asked to spend more money when there isn't a guarantee. Because if there was a guarantee, why not increase it from 15% to 25% or 50%? I'd be fully supportive of that if we knew that this model actually worked. I've talked to senior staff and I've gone back and forth and I've just said, okay, I'm going to get out of the way and move forward for this process. We've got 15%, for medium to high density projects. It's a 15% target for the whole community. So, Mayor Lehman and his affordable task force hopefully will maybe spread some of that cost out throughout the whole city. So we're not just hitting the new development that can go into maybe the tiny home project that we may or may not move forward. Some of the other subsidized products that we're doing, we'll maybe spread that out. So I don't know what that answer is. It was one of the big reasons why I'm not holding up my flag and trying to persuade this council not to go from 10 to 15 or 15 to 10 or 10 to 15. And I guess, maybe this is an ask of staff, Mayor Lehman. Would I ask this now because it's pertinent to what we're talking about now, or would I ask this in inquiries to get some information from staff about this specific topic?
Sorry, did you have a question of staff?
Yeah, my question to you is for protocol. I'd like staff to investigate and give us back some information pertained exactly to this subject. So I'm just curious. Ask now, or do I ask in inquiries?
Well, if they're able to answer it now, you can ask a question. No, go ahead.
They absolutely won't be able to answer it now. They're going to need a couple of weeks to generate this information for me. So let me ask, and then if you don't mind, it'll be 2 minutes if you don't mind.
Okay, you're at the 5 minutes you get to speak at council. You can certainly ask a question, Councillor McCann, but if I would just remind you as well, if you want to give direction to staff, it has to be by way of an amendment. So go ahead.
I would just maybe like to ask senior staff if they do have this answer, or if they could get back, if they could, come back, is that, I was just thinking the only control that we have in this process is our process at City Hall, right? And we've got so many approved applications, so many units that actually should be approved and actually started construction that aren't. And I want to know what that number is, right? Is it 500? Is it 5,000? So what is that number? because quite frankly, they're actually a big part of the problem here I look at, right? And if they're not building, right, and they're holding on to their land, then really should we be looking at some of the permits that we have towards these lands, and should we be putting an amendment forward or an discussion forward to have discussion to put a little pressure to build or to take permits away? So I guess the question I have for staff, if they can answer now, is how many do we have in the pipeline? You know, why? And then maybe the basic question is, why are these builders and developers not building?
Oddly enough, we do have the answer to that because I asked for it about a month ago in conjunction with the province's housing task force. It's really funny you're asking that question, Councillor McCann, because I'm going to be using that number tomorrow morning in a couple of calls. Mr. Prowse, I think, knows it off by heart now because we've been talking about it, but Ms. Banfield, I don't know if you want to answer, if you've got the detail on that. Units approved but not built, and then the important color is when they were approved, because to be fair, some just got planning approval, and it's not a surprise. They wouldn't have pulled a building permit yet. So Ms. Banfield?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor McCann, the round number that I would say is around 19,000 units that are approved. As you said, Mayor Lehman, definitely a full range of timing on that. But it's about 19,000 units that are approved but have not been built.
Ms. Banfield, can you indicate how many of those are more than the approval is more than 3 years old, as in approved in 2018 or earlier, or 2019 and earlier, perhaps?
Mayor Lehman, I don't have that number right at my fingertips, but as I said, the way we look at it as well, in particular as it relates to population targets, is we average about 2.7 people per unit. And so if these 19,000 units were occupied, it would be around an additional 53,000 people living in the city of Barrie.
Yeah, it's an enormous number. I guess what I'm trying to get at is how many of those 19,000 are being held off the market because the developer did not proceed to build, and how many have every intention of building, and it's just because, you know, they're not, they got the planning approval late last year, and you know, in the due course of business they will be pulling their permits. So that might be some color we can add to that answer, but go ahead, Councillor McCann.
No, that's sorry, I'm a little surprised that I got the answer. I didn't expect to get it. So I'm just trying to process maybe next questions that I have. And I guess maybe those questions, of those 19,000 units, which is astonishing, I think all of council would agree, how many of those are affordable? Like, how many of those are targeted for affordability?
Yeah, great question. It would not be very many at all. Ms. Banfield, any sense?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, I do not at this point, but I could certainly do some of that research and do an email to council.
And just so my math is aligned, it would probably be 10% if history repeated itself. Would I be close, or would that be a number that you wouldn't want to speculate?
Great question, Ms. Banfield. Have we come close to that 10% number in previous approvals?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor McCann, we certainly have, and we have come close to that target. It's more about the units actually becoming turnkey, if you will, actual people, and that's what we report on every year in the annual affordable housing. We actually get to the turnkey part of it as opposed to the pipeline part, if that makes sense to council.
Yeah, Mayor Lehman, I appreciate, I don't have many other questions or follow-ups because I wasn't expecting to get those answers tonight. But I think obviously you're, if you don't mind, I think it'd be helpful if you could maybe give a little color on what you're doing tomorrow. Like, I mean, are you speaking on behalf of?
Sure. So Ontario's big city mayors are having a series of meetings as well with AMO to understand the report from the province's housing task force. It's 55 recommendations. We want to give the government our view on those recommendations on behalf of the municipal sector, and in my case, directly on behalf of the 29 largest cities in the province. So we're working on that response, and the issue of units approved but not built is one that we've been raising since the beginning, because, you know, I think, as we've said back to the government and the Premier, yes, municipal approvals can always be improved. There are always efforts we can make, but we have this huge chunk of units that have been approved that haven't been built. So what's going on there? If it's not the planning process that's keeping those units off the market, what is it? And we have some experience with that in Barrie. Just to give you a sense, in the city of Toronto, there's 70,000 units approved but not built, and that's not including the ones in the last year. So those are, you know, stale dated, and that's they're being kept off the market for one reason or another. And so that issue is repeated to different degrees in cities across Ontario. And we are trying to get to the bottom of that as well, and working with the development industry and the construction sector to understand if there are things municipalities can do to help with building permits. And you know, without sort of a spoiler alert here, I think the short answer is there aren't, like many thorny issues, it's not a simple, easy answer. There's a bunch of different issues. Some have very like water table issues, hydrogeology issues, soils issues that come up after the planning approval, but during the building planning process or permitting process. Others, it's a change in financing, it's a change in project ownership, it's whatever reason related to the developer themselves. So stay tuned. We hope to have more to say on that issue. But I would say that back to the issue that's on the floor, the affordable housing target, I don't think it's the same issue when it comes to subsidized and supportive housing projects as what we're talking about here, which is what percentage of the units in a proposed development are considered affordable. The supportive and you know, the subsidized projects you talked about, Councillor McCann, they proceed if the organization that's going to build them is able to. It's not really a systems issue. It's more about the capacity of the charity or the development, the not-for-profit developer or the social housing, whoever it is, right? It's less about a planning policy issue when it comes to those projects. On the affordable housing target, it may well be more of a systems issue, but hopefully that gives you some color.
It does, and I appreciate that, Mayor Lehman. And I guess just one question keeps on pulsating in my brain here, and hopefully that you or maybe some of your staff that are coming with you tomorrow would be able to identify, you know, of the 29 cities that are represented in Ontario's big city, like, what are their numbers? You said Toronto's at, I think, 70 or 80,000. I mean, I'd love to know that information. Are our builders telling us they're not building in Barrie because there's too much red tape in the cost? Or are they full of malarkey? Because every city has the same type of issue we have. That would be helpful as a councillor when talking to developers and builders, right? Sure. So that, I mean, I'd love that information, and I know you're coming back in a few weeks with your housing affordability task force, I believe. Yes, no?
That's just the Barrie task force, not the provincial one.
No, I realize that, but I just thought that.
In terms of getting the information, sure.
Yeah, to have that night.
Yeah.
Like, let's get this all in the pot and let's talk about it, so we're not, you know, all over the map. That would help me out, anyways. And I guess maybe the last question I have is, do we have any updates on the new Canadians that are coming into our country? And I believe that this will have a major impact on our supply of housing. And at last I heard, will we up to 600,000 new Canadians coming into our country in the next 9 months? And I don't need the answer now. I mean, I'm pretty sure I can go to probably Stats Canada and get that myself. But I mean, just in dialogue, Mayor Lehman, that would be useful to know. And are they migrating to Barrie? Are they staying in the GTA? Where would they be, maybe from the Premier, where would they be identified as going?
Ms. Banfield?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor McCann, I can certainly look into that. I don't have anything other than, I mean, Council heard from Dr. Mike Moffat, you know, not that long ago, and he had his speculation from the research that he's done. Beyond that, I don't have anything else to offer, but with the census being, the census information is coming out little by little each month in 2022. There may be some more data that's we're able to share council at that time.
Right. And, I'll just disclose that I've got a really close relationship with the Premier's office, and I know I've been talking with them about this. I'll bring that information back in 2-3 weeks, Mayor Lehman. And I just think that let's get it all on the table and let's try to move this mountain. Would be great. So supportive. Thank you, Council and Mayor Lehman, for letting me go on a little bit, but this definitely is an issue that is close to my heart. And like everyone else, we want to see real change. And it's just one of the most frustrating subjects as a council member that I've had, because I really feel that this is a higher government issue and not municipal. And with our county, and last but not least, I hope that we're putting extreme pressure on our county to come up with a solution as well. So thank you.
Notwithstanding, we already voted. Any other comments on Section A? Okay, just a couple of things, though, I think I do need to address in that Councillor McCann, and in that back and forth discussion there. The immigration targets, of course, are set federally. Premier's office may be able to give you information on what the federal government's plans are, but that it is the federal government that makes those decisions. When it comes to affordable housing, though, and I think on the issue that's on the floor, and this is really important to understand, we're not taxing developers. The affordable housing target that goes into the official plan speaks to how many units you design to be at an affordable purchase price or an affordable rental price. And so it's about the size of them, it's about the type of them, it's about the range of community amenities and so forth. So I think it's very important that we don't conflate the two issues. One is, how do we fund social and supportive housing, which is a tax-funded initiative, or at least subsidized initiative. And yeah, it may be that we seek more ways for developer contributions, such as community benefit charges, to fund affordable housing. That was the discussion around cash in lieu last week. And that would be asking our development community, or requiring our development community, to contribute towards the cost of more affordable housing. But when we set a target in the official plan, what we're doing is we're saying, when you're designing your projects, make sure that 10 or 15% are at least targeting this purchase price or rental amount. And that can be accomplished in many cases through design. Now, the important thing here, and I think Councillor McCann is right to highlight, with the increase in the cost of construction and labor and everything else, it is very, very difficult to deliver a purchase unit for, say, $300,000 in the city of Barrie anymore. Dare I say, probably impossible, unless you've owned the land forever and you're looking at something like a very small condo or a tiny home or something like that. Fair point. And so there are going to need to be other mechanisms, and there may well need to be some efforts, especially in the new lands, the greenfield lands, to ensure that the kind of units that are developed come in at a more affordable price. I think the other issue, Councillor McCann's right, is there's no way to ensure that these units stay affordable. That's something other members of council have talked about during the discussion. But the point, and I think Councillor Aylwin made the point last week, if you flip it around and say, we're saying 85% are not going to be subject to this affordability target. And since the affordability target is really mid-market, we are talking about 85% of the units being on the much more expensive side. And so I think we have to make a choice when we're a council to say that we're going to create a city where people of all income levels can afford to rent and ultimately, hopefully, own a place and be part of our city. And if you make less money in your job because you're at an entry level, or you're working in a lower wage profession, or whatever that might be, you don't have to live outside of Barrie because that's all you can afford. That's not the kind of city I think we want to build. And these targets are part of ensuring that that isn't the case, because they're going forward, right? So I think we're all supportive of this. If you're not supportive of it, vote against the amendment or the section of the report. But I do believe these targets in the official plan are important, especially at this very difficult time in our housing situation. So we'll call a question on Section A. Those in favor of Section A, please indicate. I am as well, so that's unanimous by those voting. Thank you, members of council. Deputy Mayor Ward, Section B, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section B of the Planning Committee report dated February 2022 is circulated be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section B of the Planning Committee report dated February 8th, 2022 is circulated be adopted. This is the balance of the official plan and municipal comprehensive review. I believe there are a few amendments being proposed by members of council. The first one I've seen is Councillor Reitman's. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Reitman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Kungle, that motion 22P-007 of Section B of the Planning Committee report dated February the 8th, 2022 is circulated be amended by adding the following to paragraph 1. That Section 2.6.13 Development Policy paragraph G to delete the following, and then in quotation marks, on streets classified on map 4B as collector or arterial street or fronting.
Okay, we have an amendment moved by Councillor Reitman, seconded by Councillor Kungle, at motion 22P-07 of Section B of the Planning Committee report as circulated be amended by adding the following to paragraph 1, that Section 2613 Development Policies paragraph G, that we delete the following words, on streets classified as map 4B, on map 4B, as collector or arterial streets or fronting. Councillor Reba, would you care to explain what that one means?
Yes.
Sorry, Councillor Morales, is that a declaration on this one? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'd like to declare a real and direct pecuniary interest on this amendment. The street Duckworth on which my family and I own property is currently an intensification corridor in the existing OP, but proposed as an arterial in the draft OP as written by staff. The amendment would see the removal of the minimum density recommended for arterials if this amendment were to pass, therefore having a real and direct impact on my family and I financially. As such, I will be removing myself from this vote for as long as the amendment has a real and direct financial impact on my family and I.
Okay, thanks, Madam Clerk. Has Councillor Morales's conflict been recorded?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it has.
Thank you very much. Councillor Reitma, do you want to introduce and explain your amendment? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm indebted to Ms. Banfield and the staff who worked with me on this, this matter. I think we can all understand the difference between a collector street and an arterial and our intensification corridors. The official plan sets up those three categories. So a collector street is something like we have in Ward 1, Steel Street, for example. 2 lanes, it's residential all the way. A collector is like Blake Street. And then we have, the collector is like Steel Street. Arterial is Blake, for example, or Ferndale and other areas of the city. And then we have our 3 intensification corridors, Bayfield, Essa, and Young, basically. And I think, you know, we can all appreciate what that those streets are 3 different categories. And what this amendment does is the existing official plan, the way it's drafted, it says that the minimum density on all 3 of those streets is exactly the same. It's 50 units per hectare. And the intention of this application or this amendment is to remove that minimum requirement from the collectors and arterials, but leave it for the intensification corridors, because that's where we really initially want to drive intensification. Now that doesn't mean that intensification wouldn't happen on arterials or collectors. We have lots of other policies in the plan that encourage intensification on those streets, but those policies tend to be much more oriented towards urban design so that there's much more of a intent to sort of integrate any intensification on those streets. And of course, you can appreciate that if there's a minimum requirement on those streets of 50 units per hectare, you may not be able to integrate that development properly into the street because you've already tied your hands with saying it's got to be at 50 units per hectare. So what this amendment does is it removes that requirement from collectors and arterials without necessarily requiring them, that they would not be permitted to intensify. I wanted to also just talk a minute about the affordability part of it, because I think that might be a question in somebody's mind, is that won't that affect our intention to increase affordability? And I think the answer is no. And I think you expressed it just a few minutes ago, very eloquently, that it is the affordability has a lot to do with the design of the unit itself. And so by amending the policy the way we're suggesting is that the locations that are suitable for higher densities will stay suitable. The sites that are not suitable will still be unsuitable. This just helps to clarify what we intend to do. And I think that it helps to tell the development industry, the building industry, where they can get an approval reasonably quickly and under what circumstances, and where they cannot. And I think that is very, very useful for the industry as well as for the neighborhoods that are involved in this. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any more questions.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Reba. On the amendment, Councillor Natalie Harris, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. So this is interesting. We're speaking about our affordable housing targets, and the OP is a massive plan, and all of us are, of course, looking at our individual wards and the city of Barrie as a collective as well, and addressing a lot of ward specific as well, issues and concern with density and height, etc. So my problem that I have, I'll tell you why. I have had a big change of heart towards I really need to support housing a lot more. I just moved. As you can see, this is a different background from what I was in before. And it was, I've posted it on social media, obviously not specifically where I've moved, but I've moved and it's a rental. And it was tricky to find and it's so expensive. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me prior to them knowing that I've moved as well into this new place, concerned as well about what I went through and how difficult it was to find something. It's barely affordable. And I live with another city employee. We make pretty good money and we're going to be really tight, like most people in the city of Barrie. So my concern with these types of amendments right now is that we are really kind of attacking already the possibility of really growing the number of units that we have in the city at so many different angles. And instead of having the staff come forward and they've presented that this is what their suggestion is with this official plan, and they've worked on this for so long, and this is how they see that we will reach these targets. So while I do understand, again, as a city councilor, Ward 6, I have lots of proposed developments, lots of big developments, lots of, we're ESSA Road, and there's a lot of concerns with that. I really still feel that we need to grow so much. And I'm really worried that if we start to play around a little bit like too much with these specifics, won't that make builders maybe be a little bit more cautious of coming to Barrie as well and putting their investment here? I get what everybody is trying to say, and I know that this is complicated, it's a big situation, but that's what staff was here for. And I get it, council makes their voices as well, but this plan is because the city of Barrie is growing to this level and we really need this much. So that's how I feel, and I'll just leave it at that.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. On others on the amendment, Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Kungl.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I will support this. Councillor Rietma highlighted a good point here that there is a significant difference between an intensification corridor, arterial, and a collector, and they should not be treated the same. And like, I mean, this still doesn't mean that we won't see these developments come in at 50 units per hectare or greater in the arterials or the collectors. However, it provides more flexibility opposed to setting that minimum target, because not every area is going to be suitable for that high of a density. Every situation is different, and this gives our staff and also gives council a little bit more flexibility to be able to approve things when it's appropriate in those areas. And I'll be quite honest with you, I was astounded when I heard about the volume of permits that are just sitting that haven't been built. 19,000 is a crazy number when you consider the population of the city of Barrie and the size of our city in comparison to, let's say, 70,000 or 75,000 that it was for a massive city the size of Toronto. It just goes to show you, this has nothing to do with the planning department or council not approving stuff. I have no idea what the issue is here, but obviously the builders aren't building for some reason. And that's where we really need to start putting some control measures in place with these applications to ensure that there's some reasonable expiry dates, so that way this stuff does get built, because we shouldn't be in the situation where we are. But I do support this because it does provide a little bit more flexibility opposed to setting a minimum target as high as it is, especially on a collector road.
Thanks, Councillor Harvey. And just a reminder to members of council, we're at council, so you can speak once for up to 5 minutes to each amendment that's on the floor, and then I will call the question. Next, I have Councillor Kungl.
Thanks through you, Mayor Lehman, to perhaps Ms. Banfield. So I did support this, and while I'm clearly on the housing affordability task group and whatnot, I do see the blend between how we are clear with residents around intention for infill and development, and do want to see that infill be maximized where appropriate, but also around clarifying to residents what you can expect, at least around what may or may not come to council within arterial and collector roads. So I did have the benefit of having a great conversation with Ms. Banfield. I'm comfortable supporting this, and I don't believe it will negatively affect it. I think it's just around clarity around where we're directing certain types of degrees of intensification. Happy to continue to hear comments on that, but I guess I'll just, without putting Ms. Banfield on the spot too much, I'll just create an avenue to say, are there any concerns that you see with respects to the work staff have done to this actually being a concern around development on a go forward with the intentions around, trying to see good use of available lands for density where we've identified intensification corridors.
Ms. Banfield.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Kungl. So there are areas in the official plan that have much higher intensification targets, much higher building heights, and those are the strategic growth areas, the urban growth center, the intensification corridors. We're talking about, through this amendment, Councillor Rietma's talking about the neighborhood areas, and he's talking about local and collector roads in the neighborhood area, collectors and arterials in the neighborhood area. And the neighborhood area in the plan is the area that we say we are expecting, yes, intensification, but more modest intensification. And so the density, by removing the density, again, it's loose language in the first place. So it should be a minimum. And Councillor Rietma and I, when we were talking about it, we're saying that in the neighborhood area, that gentle intensification could look like small singles, or it could look like semi-detached structures. It doesn't automatically have to go to townhouses. And so that's really where this proposed amendment came from, was to recognize that there still may be intensification, but it may not automatically go to the townhouse built form or a low-rise apartment built form. And again, it's very specific to these road classifications. So rest assured, even with this amendment, there are many areas still in the city of Barrie that can accommodate intensification, higher densities, higher built forms, even with this amendment.
Thank you for that, Ms. Banfield. And oh, yeah, I'll hold it there. I think my next one might come up later. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Congo. Councillor Thompson.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to staff. Ms. Banfield, with that answer, so we've worked on the OP for 4 years, and you're saying that the intensification corridors, the young and that, are the same as these streets. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Thompson. Throughout the official plan, we have referenced local roads, collector roads, arterials, and intensification corridors. So this particular policy did clump together collectors, arterials, and intensification as it relates to a proposed minimum density. This is just this one particular policy. There are other policies in the plan that differentiate the density and the height along those local, collector, arterial, and intensification corridors.
So do you think we've missed the opportunity of increasing the intensification corridors? If we've lumped them all together, it's obvious that staff's recommendations were to have this intensification per hectare. So, and now we're amending it. It just seems that we're trying to piecemeal things, where I think that if we're going to take from one, we have to increase the other. And I don't know why staff would have lumped them all together, as we've seen some developments that hit these targets. You know, Councillor Aylwin is seeing it at almost every proposal, so it's just, I don't feel comfortable saying we're going to do this on a blanket, but some other ward councillors are going to feel it because we've got to make up. But I think the official plan over 4 years, I can't see, like, it seems like this was an easy path to lump them all together. But if we were concerned about you're saying that you don't have any concerns with this amendment, then I don't know why staff wouldn't recognize that throughout this 4 years. And I understand that staff have to do at the direction of council, but I just think it was a missed opportunity that if you take from one, you got to give the other to keep meeting our targets. So I'll listen for more comments, but at this time, I probably, I'm finding it a little difficult to support this amendment.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Anyone else with comments on the amendment? Councillor Jim Harris.
Right, thank you, Mayor Lehman. Maybe through you to Ms. Banfield, and Councillor Thompson's question gave me something to think about. I was wondering, with this particular reduction in the density, would this then open the door to the possibility of similar height reductions on these type of roads based on a lesser density? And that's, sorry, through you, Mayor Lehman, to Ms. Banfield, sorry.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Jim Harris. So this was an encouraging policy to give some direction to what the minimum densities should be. And again, I just want to reiterate that this is specific to the neighborhood areas. So there are some properties that face onto that might have a medium density designation or a high density designation. This remains valid only for the neighborhood area. And at this point, no, this amendment doesn't propose to change the height. But again, the height is also tied to, in the official plan, is tied to whether it's a local road, arterial, collector, or intensification corridor.
Okay, thank you. You may have asked it, but just so then there would be a correlation, or there wouldn't be a correlation to heights as it relates to this amendment on these type of roads.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Jim Harris. No, there's no direct correlation to this amendment to what heights would be proposed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other comments on the amendment? Councillor Elwin.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I do have a question for Ms. Banfield first. We're talking about this section of the official plan, and I'm recognizing that in this section, it talks about transit supportive development, and that's the justification for this policy direction. Can you speak a bit more to that original justification, why staff were looking to encourage this type of density along these types of roads?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Aylwin. Ultimately, it's good planning practice to have some critical mass along properties where they're serviced by public transit. We heard this comment from the public, and really the city wanting to shift away from being, car oriented. But again, it doesn't necessarily, this amendment wouldn't necessarily preclude that density from happening. Again, it's just, it's more about just, I guess, with the removal of these two road types would just be a little bit, provide a bit more flexibility for some of those lower intensification projects, again, in the neighborhood area on some of these smaller streets.
Thank you for that answer. So I won't be supporting this amendment, and for a couple of reasons. First of all, the fact that the policy, as it's written now, is about encouraging this type of density, and it isn't precluding less dense development along these corridors. I think that's a pretty good reason to not support this. It's good for us to encourage good planning policy, as our chief planner has just said. And my other reasons, affordability is actually down the list a bit for me on this. A bigger reason why I would oppose this, and why I think we should be encouraging transit supportive density, is we're in a climate crisis. And we know that our city's greenhouse gas emissions, 55% of those emissions come from personal vehicle use. So we have to transition, and we have to transition fast. And one way to do that is by encouraging more density in our communities, so that transit is more viable, and so that our communities become more walkable and more complete. So this is about encouraging a healthier community. It's not imposing intense development on these streets. It's not requiring intense development on these streets at all. It's about encouraging good planning policy and more sustainable development. So I can't possibly support this with our climate goals in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Owen. Other comments on the amendment? Okay, just before I call the vote then, just a quick question, Ms. Banfield. Would the impact of the minimum density preclude somebody on a collector or arterial street from, say you've got a rundown bungalow and they wish to replace that with, say, a nice semi-detached. If it doesn't hit the minimum density target, would the policy that is being amended as written in the original OP, would it preclude the property owner from being able to do that without an official plan amendment?
To you, Mayor Lehman, apologies. No, it would not.
Okay, so the original policy, maybe just give a bit of clarity then on how the minimum density aspect would apply in these areas.
Well, again, Mayor Lehman, it does tie into a minimum density to be around a transit supportive number, should be, and that's exactly how the policy says, should be around 50 units per hectare. And again, that ties into, in particular, the neighborhood area and the size of the lots that we see there. So that really is the intent, was to say, if we want to get this transit-oriented density along these roads, it should be around this this density. And the whole idea was to provide some guidance, and it's more of an encouraging policy, to be honest, to encourage development to be at a transit supportive density.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. That was one of my concerns around the amendment. Okay, with that then, I will call the question. Those in favor of the amendment, please indicate. Opposed to the amendment? Okay, the amendment is defeated. Thanks for the discussion on the amendment, members of council. I know we have several others. The next one I've got on my list is Councillor McCann. I think these have all been circulated, but go ahead, Councillor McCann, and introduce your amendment if you would like to.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. It's moved by myself, second by Councillor Gary Harvey, that motion 22P007 of Section B of the Planning Committee report dated February 8th, 2022, as circulated, be amended by adding the following section to paragraph 1. That on Appendix 2 of the official plan, the areas of Phase 3 East be absorbed into the existing Phase 2 East, and the area of Phase 4 East be renamed Phase 3 East.
Okay, we have an amendment. It's moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Harvey, that the official plan motion be amended. In Appendix 2 of the official plan, the area of Phase 3 East be absorbed into the existing Phase 2 East, and the area of Phase 4 East be renamed Phase 3 East. Go ahead, Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. This is a really simple procedure. I've dealt with senior staff members, Michelle Banfield and the applicant, and they're just looking to build faster and they want to build sooner. And it's a little piece in the southeast corner right up against Innisfil. And Michelle Banfield and I agree that this would be prudent. So I'm asking council to support it so they can get more houses built. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor McCann. On the amendment, comments, questions? Deputy Mayor Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. And I guess I'm a bit concerned. I mean, I'm surprised that staff would support this because we had a phasing plan for a reason in the annexed lands, or the whatever they're called now, that, the idea was to wait till one was filled up before we started opening up the second for many reasons. I mean, for servicing reasons and even transit. I mean, we don't want to see sort of homes built in an isolated area like we've had in the past, where we've got areas that aren't next to developed areas. So I'm assuming then that means that all the Phase 1 and Phase 2 lands are now filled with houses. I assume, is that the truth? I haven't been down there for a while, but are all those lands been developed? I guess my question for staff is, why do we phase lands?
Ms. Banfield.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Deputy Mayor Ward. So this is looking at an amendment to Phase 2, which I call now new Phase 2. So the Phase 1 in the new OP is much larger than the existing Phase 1. And in the new OP, there is a change to the phasing policy that Phase 1 would have to be 60% registered before we could even think about moving into Phase 2. So in this particular site, staff had it effectively as a piece of property bisected by some natural heritage. So staff had put Phase 2, which is north of the natural heritage, as Phase 2, and the land south of the natural heritage in phase 3, but the whole site is owned by one property owner. And so for this application to even begin, 60% of the new phase 1 would have to be registered. And so ultimately, staff would understand why the applicant would want to have their entire parcel in the same phase. Then the power of moving, getting their draft approval on their entire site, and being able to move through that entire design at the same time is likely appealing to them. But rest assured, there are strong phasing policies and a bigger phase 1 to actually get to registration before this property would be able to advance.
Okay, I'm kind of glad to hear that. I thought maybe we're changing the phasing policy, but the phasing, they still have to meet certain standards in phase 1 before development will be allowed. So that takes care of my concerns. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ward. On the amendment, any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the amendment, please indicate. Are any opposed? None. That carries unanimously. Thank you, members of council. The next one I have is Councillor Gary Harvey and seconded by Councillor Fungal, I think. Go ahead, Councillor Harvey.
Just a moment of indulgence there, Mayor Lehman. I'm just trying to get, because we had a slight variance in the wording here, so I'm just trying to get it back up. So I'll send it out to all members of council, just so that way they can see. There's just a few words that changed. Okay, so moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Kungle, that motion 22P007 of section B of the Planning Committee report dated February 8th, 2022 as circulated, be amended by adding the following sections under paragraph 1. That in section 2.6.1.3 development policies, paragraph A, to delete and replace the following. Unless otherwise specified in this plan, development on lands designated neighborhood area shall be kept to 3 stories or less unless otherwise specified in the zoning bylaw, and in which case shall be no more than 4 stories. That the following paragraph be added to section 2.6.1.3 development policies. Section E, new development in the designated greenfield areas as shown by the phasing plan on Appendix 2, may be permitted up to 12 stories where 1, the lands are comprehensively planned through an official plan amendment, a draft plan of subdivision, a draft plan of condominium, or a secondary plan to accommodate buildings of up to 12 stories. 2, the lands front onto and are oriented towards an arterial or collector street as identified in map 4B, or are accessed by a private road that is connected to an arterial or collector street. 3, appropriate transitions from lands planned for and occupied by ground-related built forms can be achieved as per section 3 policies of this plan. And 4, servicing availability can be confirmed by the city.
Okay, we have an amendment moved by Councillor Harvey, seconded by Councillor Kungle. That the OP motion be amended by adding the following sections in paragraph 1. That in section 2613 development policies, paragraph A, delete and replace with the following, unless otherwise specified in this plan, development on lands designated neighborhood area shall be kept to 3 stories or less unless otherwise specified in the zoning bylaw, and in which case shall be no more than 4 stories. Secondly, that the following paragraph be added to the same section 2613, new development, and it would be a paragraph E, new development in the designated greenfield areas as shown by the phasing plan on Appendix 2 may be permitted up to 12 stories where 1, the lands are comprehensively planned through an OPA, draft plan of subdivision, a draft plan of condominium or secondary plan to accommodate buildings of up to 12 stories. 2, the lands front onto and are oriented towards an arterial or a collector street as identified on map 4B or are accessed by a private road connected to an arterial or collector street. 3, appropriate transition from lands planned for and occupied by ground related built forms can be achieved as per the section 3 policies of this plan. And 4, servicing availability can be confirmed by the city. Go ahead, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Actually,
sorry, Councillor Morales. Yep.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. First of all, this is a two-sided thing. Through you, I believe you, through the move of the motion and possibly the city clerk, could you separate this motion? And specifically, why is the first section, I have a direct and real pecuniary interest. The second motion, if I were to just let this go in one, would actually prevent me from voting on something that affects Ward 9 quite significantly. 1/3 of the expense per take are in Ward 9, and for me to have no voice for 1/3 of the impacted area is it just, I personally feel it shouldn't be lumped together. So that is my first question, and then I have clarification questions to see if I need to declare a pecuniary interest in the first one.
Okay, so Councillor Harvey, if you're willing, we will deal with these matters separately. Is that all right?
That's fine, Mayor Lehman.
Yeah, you've introduced it, so you could speak to what's coming, but we'll deal with them in order. So Councillor Morales, I believe you want to declare on the first one, or you had a question? Yes,
thank you, Mayor Lehman. I don't know through who. I think I might start with the motion, but I also want some staff feedback on this. I am not debating the content, I'm debating the intent of the wording, because to myself, and it's a great opportunity to know exactly what's being proposed. So, Councillor Harvey, in just plain language, does the motion, the first section of your motion, does it affect 2.6.1.3 C? Because if it affects 2.6.1.3 C, that is development in historic neighborhoods. If it affects that section, then I do have a real and direct pecuniary interest. If the language, because I saw some language that said words such, and I'm quoting here, unless otherwise specified in the plan. So if it does affect C, I cannot vote on it. If it doesn't affect C, if C remains intact, then I don't have a pecuniary interest on that. So I'm just wondering a bit on the language, because it speaks to reducing it to 3 unless it's said somewhere else, in which case shall be no more than 4 stories. Could I get some clarity on that?
Councillor Harvey, are you able to answer Councillor Morales' question?
I think I can confidently answer it. However, I think it's probably best that we get the true clarification from Ms. Banfield.
Ms. Banfield.
I do believe that it will affect them.
Yeah, Ms. Banfield.
Through your Mayor Lehman to Councillor Morales, it is a citywide proposal that is, the previous language said up to 4 stories, and this language is clarifying that 3 stories would be the standard, and it could be higher if the zoning bylaw reflected that, but in any case would be no higher than 4 stories, but it is intended to be across the municipality.
Perfect, thank you, Ms. Banfield. Through you, Mayor Lehman, as such, I'd like to declare a real and direct pecuniary interest on this amendment as the street Duckworth on which my family and I own property. This amendment would see the reduction in max potential height if this amendment were to pass, having a real and direct impact on my family. As such, I will be removing myself from this vote for as long as the amendment has a real and direct financial impact on my family.
Madam Clerk, has Councillor Morales' conflict been recorded?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it has.
Okay, let's move on with debating the proposed amendment. Councillor Harvey, if you could introduce it.
Great, thank you, Mayor Lehman. Obviously, we've separated it, but I'm going to speak a little bit to the second piece too, because that's why they were tied together. So this is a similar amendment to the one that I had last week, worded a little differently. And obviously, I raised some concerns last week about how our collectors and arterial roads were being lumped together when it comes to the height. And that's why this amendment's coming forward again. And the reason that I've lumped in the other piece is because what we're doing is we're actually adding height and density into the annex lands, which is a clean slate that will not have any impact on our current residents. And that's where we've been seeing a lot of issues and what I would say turmoil with our residents is when these developments come forward and they're much higher and denser than what the residents in the area believe fit into that area. And I know there's been several around the city that I don't disagree with the residents. So this is not to restrict the height. However, instead of just changing the language, instead of up to 4 stories, now it's up to 3 stories. However, it still doesn't negate the fact that they can go 4 as long as it's approved through the zoning bylaw. And the reason for this is we've seen in the past certain applicants, certain applications, certain planning firms around this city that seem to always push the buttons when it comes to height and density around the city. And this is to bring a little bit more level to the playing field instead of having it at 4, because in some of our areas, 4 just wouldn't be acceptable and 3 would be a lot more appropriate. So that this is still basically accomplishing the same thing what the previous wording would. However, it's not leaving the ceiling at 4. And it's in some areas, it is a lot more appropriate to go 3. However, it's not shutting the door to 4. And that's where I think, again, it provides a little more flexibility for our staff and for us as council to be able to determine what's appropriate in these different areas instead of the blanket approach that this new official plan has taken. Because I don't think treating all areas of the city the same, because especially in our historic neighborhoods, that's truly where I have the biggest concern, because the likelihood of a developer coming and buying a house on Marcellus or a couple of houses on Mapleton to try and build a 4-story, let's say, stacked towns is extremely unlikely. I was just talking to one of my residents who just sold their house for $400,000 over asking. And that's the market we're in right now. So it's just not feasible. However, you get into some of the older areas where you might have older homes that may or may not be in the greatest condition. Well, those are going for a lot cheaper. And that's where we're probably going to see developers coming in and buying up some of these older areas. And the prime example I use is Burton Avenue. Burton Avenue is predominantly comprised of 2-story older historic homes. And this policy would allow a 4-story structure to be built beside them, even with the 2-story differential policy that's added just for those historic neighborhoods. That's where I have my concern. And I know from talking to people that live in that area, they share the same concern. We heard from Ms. Colbatch tonight, who spoke a little bit about that particular issue. And like, I mean, this isn't me looking out for a Ward 7 issue. This is me looking out for a historic neighborhood issue, because I really think if this moves forward in its current form, that's who's going to feel the impact, not our suburban wards. So anyway, I hope members have had a chance to think about things since last week, because I think this is a little bit more reasonable plan, especially too with the height that we may or may not be approving with the lowering of the heights. We're increasing it exponentially in the annex lands, because right now it's at 6 stories, and the next amendment after this, because of the separation, would allow up to 12.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Natalie Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I love the second part. So I'm happy that we divided it. I'll speak to the first part again. And again, this is a lot of personal education that's been happening to me with respect to where I've had to move and looking into prices and costs of everything. So costs of how to buying a home, renting a home, buying land, etc. So not only are our home prices exponentially higher, land prices are exponentially higher. So with that being said, if a builder comes in and is restricted to the 3 stories, I think maybe there's some opportunities to broaden our design and the way we design things, and make the 3.5 where the basement it's bright and it's still another floor, and we'd still be making it so it's not a towering building beside these areas, but you know, and of course it would be on an individual basis. If we're talking about a historical home on Burton, etc., then we would be addressing these things with respect to that. But again, my concern is more of the blanket statement about it, and how it might deter builders from saying, well, if we can only do 3 stories here, and the cost of the land is X, and we need to do 3.5, maybe 4, we're going to go somewhere else. And again, when we need more product out there to help with the affordability, more buildings, more space, more homes for people. I've just had a rude awakening, to be honest, over the last week. And again, I sympathize and I understand what Councillor Harvey's saying, because being a Ward 6 councillor, I get a lot of people that reach out to me and don't want you know, an increase in density and don't want an increase in height. And a lot of times they don't want trees to be cut down too. But if we don't go higher, then we have to go out. So we need to maybe trust what the OP is saying here, and especially with how big our city needs to grow. So I love the second part. I just, in my heart, can't say yes to this first one as a blanket statement. I would definitely be willing to talk to Councillor Harvey about certain roads that he has in mind, like last week. But that's where my thoughts are with respect to this right now.
Other comments on the amendment? Councillor Riepma and then Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an interesting approach, and it's a one that I think reaches a real compromise and is probably good for every neighborhood in the city. I think in and I'll just speak for Ward 1 for a minute. But we have a lot of areas on these streets that are bungalows. And if you put a 4-story building beside that, it'll be out of character and out of scale. And that's the issue. I think that if you build a 2-story beside it or a 3-story, you'd be a lot closer in scale. And you can provide affordable and higher density at that level, well designed with smaller units. And I think that's how we get there. And I think that Councillor Harris suggests that this is a blanket across the city, and in some ways it is. But I think the nice thing about Councillor Harvey's amendment is that it leaves the door open for 4 stories. It allows you to take a look at your zoning bylaw and say, yes, in this case, it does fit. And I think, you know, when it comes right down to it, that's what we are really trying to do, is to create a community where new development fits in to the existing neighborhoods. And that way we get a much more cohesive community that works really well at a higher density. I mean, just think about it. We already permit second suites, and that's sort of a blanket across the city. You know, we could double our population by doing that if every house did it. And there's certainly no thinking that they would. But there are a lot of opportunities for increasing density and increasing opportunities for people. And I think we really need to let the official plan do what it needs to do, and that is to permit these things to happen and give us the opportunity to regulate them well and properly. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Riepma. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Mayor Lehman. Through you to, I have an amendment to the amendment.
All right, fire away.
So that's section 2.6.13A be amended by adding or arterial after the words of local. And at the end of the paragraph, with the exemption of a section of Mapleview Road from town line to ESSA, unless otherwise specified in the zoning bylaw, which is at the end of it, and I can speak to that.
We do need that written out. Have we got that circulated? Councillor Thompson, is that with the clerk?
Yes, Mayor Lehman.
She's got
I'm
it.
sorry,
Okay.
I thought it was sent. We were going back and forth. It was.
Yeah, I do see the email there, but I don't have the wording. I don't think. Oh, no, I do.
That's
if
about
that was
15 down.
confirmed. Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so we have an amendment to the amendment. And that is to replace the reference to the 3-story in Councillor Harvey's amendment and replace it with the following. That section 2613A be amended to add or arterial after the words onto a local, with the remainder of the paragraph staying the same, and in B, that the word arterial be removed and the following words be added to the end of the paragraph, with the exception of the section of Mapleview Road from town line to ESSA, or otherwise, or unless otherwise specified in the zoning bylaw, and in which case shall be no more than 4 stories. Councillor Thompson, do you want to explain how that works?
Yep. So Mayor Lehman, like just looking at this, and I had issue with the whole amendment as I did last week, as I voted against it. I just think, you know, we've talked about today with the arterial roads being the reason for intensification, you know, transit and the walkability of communities. And that's why, like, arterial roads are most suited for the density. So that's why I wanted to remove, I don't think that we should interfere with the form build on arterial roads, you know, and, you know, to Councillor Riepma's comment, you know, with good design, you can have, you know, more density, but, you know, we've tried to already change the densities in other amendments. So I feel that they both work hand in hand. So I would like to leave the arterials off of this amendment. And I do understand, which I think is already captured in the OP with the height, 1 story can only go to 3 anyways, 2 story can go to 4. But, you know, if Councillor Harvey would be more comfortable with having it 3 blanket, then I can support that, but I don't want to have the arterial. And with the last section with the ESSA road to town line, you know, we went through a very lengthy planning meeting, and, you know, it's, so we've already set precedent on that one section. So just continuing there. And I had a lot of conversation with Councillor, you know, Jim Harris, Deputy Mayor Ward, you know, obviously the seconder, Councillor Kungle. And there were some concerns, you know, Deputy Mayor Ward said, you know, Sunnydale, for example, across from the park, beautiful lots, bungalows, that a 4-story probably would change the character of that neighborhood. And that's why, you know, collectors, locals are all remaining, but the arterial is not. So that's my reason for the amendment, looking for a compromise and some commonalities around the table.
Okay, on the amendment to the amendment. Councillor Morales, you were conflicted out of the original amendment.
Correct. So
We're on an amendment to that amendment. You don't need to declare again.
I'm just wondering if my conflict still exists, and I just wanted to ask the director of planning.
We're on the amendment to the matter that you're conflicted on.
Okay.
So you're
Perfect. I'm automatic already. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay. On the amendment to the amendment, discussion, comments, questions. Councillor Natalie Harris.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Lehman. Just a quick question to Councillor Thompson, so I'm making sure I'm interpreting this right. I'm kind of getting jumbled. Okay, so basically this would just allow for Mapleview Road from Town Line to ESSA or otherwise specified by, so it would allow for those areas to have that rule as per what Councillor Harvey said last week as well. Is that right? But it wouldn't be the whole city, it would just be that stretch. Am I understanding that right?
Through you, Mayor Lehman.
Councillor Thompson.
So what it is that all arterials across the city would not be affected by the height. So we're actually leaving it to proposals to come forward. And then that section, because that section of Mapleview is actually an arterial. So because of the last planning meeting and stuff, that's why I've included that one little section to basically continue with the council decision on that one application.
Perfect, that's what I was thinking. I just wanted to make sure. That's great, thank you. And I am in favor of that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. Other comments on the amendment to the amendment? Councillor, I think I saw Harvey first, then Harris, then Congo. Go ahead, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'm not overly crazy about it, but I guess I'll support it. It's middle ground here, and it obviously does protect the biggest thing that was part of my concern in my own area, because we have already made a decision on that one particular application along Mapleview. So it still does protect council's decision on that, which I'm happy with. And I guess with the arterial, I guess I'll take it as a compromise, because I don't think we're probably going to have enough support around the table to go all the way here. So I'll batting 50, I'll take it. Councillor Thompson, thanks for coming to some compromise here, and hopefully enough members of council will at least support this.
Good stuff, Councillor Harvey. Thanks for that. Next, I have Jim Harris and then Councillor Kungle. Councillor Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lehman. And I do appreciate having speaking with Councillor Thompson about this. It's certainly a tension point, and I'm glad to hear Councillor Harvey came to his senses about newer streets like Marcellus and Mapleton not being included in this type of height risk, because it makes no sense. But I do appreciate his concern for Burton Avenue. I think, although nothing's happening on Burton Avenue, as Burton transitioned into Yonge Street, as you might know, things do change. And so it is a compromise. And, the tension of height and density, sometimes we talk about the scale, and we've had these challenges, the infill with these infill developments. And is it always the height? Not always. Sometimes it's how it fits on the lot. And the height can be actually a way to reduce the impact of the building. So it's a fine line. So just kind of blanketing height can be challenging. So I do like the compromise. I think we want to come to a situation where we're trying to manage density, we're trying to manage growth and affordability. So thank you, Councillor Thompson, for bringing this forward, and Councillor Congo, I will support this. Thank you.
Mayor Lehman, can we get the vote, please? 10 a.m. And I think we've got consensus here.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, Councillor McCann. I'd like to call the question. We have several more amendments to deal with, councillors. I don't want to cut off people from speaking. Councillor Congo, you did indicate, but if it's all right, I'd like to call the question on this. It's an amendment to the amendment. Okay. Those in favor of the amendment to the amendment, please indicate. Any opposed? None. That carries unanimously on the original amendment. And it is just the first paragraph of the two that Councillor Harvey had introduced. Further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question on the amendment as amended. Those in favor? And opposed? Sorry, Councillor Natalie Harris, sorry. Are you trying to speak or?
We are, I'm confused. We're on this first section still, and it is.
So this one is
just with Councillor Thompson's amendment.
No, now we're back to Councillor Harvey's original amendment.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll call the question again. Those in favor, please indicate. And opposed? 2. So that does carry as well. On the second paragraph of that amendment, which we're now going to deal with, we're dealing with them separately. This one, Councillor Harvey did introduce it. I will just touch base again to talk about it, and then Councillor Harvey, you can speak to it. This is to permit up to 12 stories in the designated greenfield areas with subject to certain conditions, and that's set out in 1 through 4 of Councillor Harvey's amendment here. So Councillor Harvey, did you wish to speak to this piece of the amendment or this next paragraph?
Just very quickly, Mayor Lehman, because I did touch on it when we were dealing with the first piece of it. But this is to increase some height and density into the annex lands, because if you look at the annex lands were planned several years ago, and we're in different times now, and this is to get some more height and density into the annex lands. It's a clean slate, and it's far more appropriate to be pushing height and density into a clean slate than it is to our built boundaries and infill projects. So I think this will actually accomplish, if in fact the developers do start building some taller buildings, because right now the highest thing is 6 stories, we'll actually increase our number of units available opposed to what the previous amendment may have accomplished.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Harvey. On this amendment, Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'll be supporting the amendment. The only thing I'll just bring to the attention of my fellow colleagues is, if you guys look at the map, I don't want to ask the clerk to put it up, because I'm just looking at it here. Mapleview Drive East is covered by this green field. So if this amendment passes, Ward 9's Mapleview and Ward 10's Mapleview will see up to 12 stories, which is a very different reality than other sections of Mapleview. I'm personally okay with that. Ward 9 needs to support growth. We have a transit hub of the GO station in there. We need to make the tough decisions politically. If that ends up being a political consequence to me, that's me doing my job on that one. I just want to bring to the attention that specifically, and this is nothing other than how the map is, by the way. This wasn't done on purpose. This is just how the map is. It doesn't include Mapleview Drive West in Appendix 2, and it doesn't at Ward 9. And I'm okay with this one. I just want to note, obviously, that as we take into consideration the Watson report, and we need to create density to support roads and infrastructure and growing sustainably, and making sure that it doesn't kind of get out of hand for the whole city. If this amendment passes, it has the possibility, not everyone's building 12 stories, but has the possibility that Ward 10 and Ward 9 are pulling their huge significant fair share and then some, which I personally, I'm supportive of it in Ward 9, and I'd love to see some more of this density specifically around the GO station.
Thanks, Councillor Morales. I would just note in the amendment that there are significant high density areas designated. This amendment does not deal with those, such as the area around the GO station. This is dealing with some of the other areas in the secondary plan areas. Other comments on the amendment? Okay, I am going to support this, and would have supported the last one, or did support the last one as well, although my vote wasn't needed. in part because I think Councillor Harvey came back here with an amendment that attempted to, in a way, more than compensate for the number of potential lost units. You know, similar to in the budget, when we're proposing to increase a cost, it's best to take one out. Council makes these tough choices, and in the midst of a housing crisis, I think the right approach to reducing a density in the plan is to offset it with an increase elsewhere, so that we're not making net reductions overall to what is possible. So I appreciated this approach. I would have struggled with the first amendment if it hadn't been for Councillor Thompson's amendment. And I think, you know, what the effect of that was, it actually reduced even further the change. And so it wouldn't be hard with this amendment that's on the floor right now to more than make up for what we might lose on some collector roads in older neighborhoods with only 1 or 2 changes to built form in the secondary plan areas. And I think Councillor Harvey's quite right. When you plan for the density at the outset and you build it at the outset, it is immeasurably easier for everyone to accept it as part of their community than when you are trying to retrofit it. So I appreciate the approach. And I'll call the question on the amendment. Those in favor of this amendment, please indicate. I am as well. That makes it unanimous. Thanks, members of council. And Councillor Harvey for the amendment. I believe you have one more, Councillor Harvey. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lehman. This is the last one. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McCann that motion 22P007 of section B of the Planning Committee report dated February 8th, 2022 as circulated be amended by adding the following section under paragraph 1. That map 2 be amended to extend the commercial district to the west side of Brine Drive.
Okay, it is moved by Councillor Gary Harvey, seconded by Councillor McCann, that motion 22P7 of section B of the Planning Committee report, the official plan motion as circulated, be amended by adding the following section. That map 2 be amended to extend the commercial district to the west side of Brine Drive. And it might be useful to share screen if we can pull up, Madam Clerk. I think the information was circulated to council, but if we can get map 2 up on the screen, that would be really helpful, just for the purpose of debating this amendment. And Councillor Harvey, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Mayor Lehman.
Sorry, just before you start, can we zoom in, Wendy, on the west side of Highway 400? Yep, just a little west of where you've got the cursor to the left. Yep, and just zoom in right there. We can. Maybe a few more times. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Councillor Harvey.
Great, thank you, Mayor Lehman. So the additional piece that's being added is you can see Brine Drive. So this is pertaining to the property to the west of the 400, and the dark pink line is Brine Drive. So what it's doing is adding the properties on the west side of the road. So that way they are part of the commercial district also. This will allow further development to be uniform on both sides of the road, because part of the commercial district also allows a component of residential. And I just think it would be a lot more beneficial to the community and also look a lot more uniform if we allow both sides of the road to grow equally and uniformly, opposed to only permitting the residential piece on the east side of the road and not the west side of the road. So that's the basics behind this. I've seen it in other areas like the city of Vaughan, where you've got that mix use in there, and it definitely does look a lot more uniform when you've got it on both sides of the road.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Harvey. On this amendment, comments, members of council. Deputy Mayor Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I don't really have a problem with it. I just wanted to check with staff. Does this have any effect on our Barrie Lands needs assessment by making this change?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Deputy Mayor Ward. No, it does not, because these are not vacant land. They are already developed. So it does not impact the overall municipal comprehensive review.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ward. Councillor Congo? Nope, same question. Okay. Any further questions, comments, discussion? I had one question, Ms. Banfield. If the change really here, because this was being proposed to be industrial or employment area, non-industrial, the list of permitted uses is actually pretty similar. And I believe by way of the amendment that we made last week or at Planning Committee around the employment area, non-industrial, we kind of changed, well, we did change the policies that would apply to redeveloping those sites. So I guess my only question is if these particular sites, and you're right, they're already improved, and most of them are big box stores. In a couple of cases, they're vacant actually, but I think they're about to become big stores again. One's a farm, is going to be a Farm Boy. It was formerly a department store and so on. But I guess my question, Ms. Banfield, is the effect of changing to commercial district. What impact is that really going to have? I guess it's only if the sites are redeveloped in the future. Is that correct?
To you, Mary Lehman, absolutely. The policies in the employment area, industrial and employment area, non-industrial, have recognized that some of those existing sites have a more commercial flair to them, and we've recognized that. The true difference in this amendment is that by a change to commercial district, residential uses are permitted in the commercial district. And that really is one of the biggest changes. It's about the fact that the commercial district permits residential uses, whereas the employment area industrial and employment area non-industrial does not.
Got it. Interesting. Okay. Okay, thanks for that. I will call the question on the amendment then. Those in favor of this amendment, please indicate. Is anyone opposed? None. That carries. Thanks, Councillor Harvey. We have one remaining one that I'm aware of that's been circulated. We do have motion without a notice for tonight, but I think that's the balance of the matters on tonight's agenda. Do members wish a break, or do you want to keep powering through and seeing if we can get finished with this? Keep going? Keep going, keep going. Let's keep going. Last amendment is by Councillor Morales. Go ahead, Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I will keep this short. I'm actually going to set myself a timer as well to keep myself accountable on this one here. And the only thing I'll say before I ask the clerk to put the presentation up is I did not prepare this presentation. It was Hannah Bregman, one of our active transportation committee members. So she couldn't be here to present this. So I literally have a script. Councillor Owen knows this as well as the PowerPoint. There's a couple of words in the PowerPoint. I believe one word was biased. I'm just, full disclosure, it's not my presentation. So it's just language that the member used. So with that, Ms. Clerk, can you put up the presentation, please? And I'll go through this as quickly as possible. Thank you, members of council. It's basically Amendment 5.
Sorry, Councillor Morales. Sorry, before you speak to it, you need to introduce it. So could you just introduce your amendment?
Absolutely, thank you. That motion 22-P-007, Section B of the Planning Committee report dated February 8th, 2022, as circulated, be amended by adding the following section under paragraph 1. That map 5 be amended to reduce the Bradford Street cross section right of way to 22 meters.
Okay, we have an amendment. It's moved by Councillor Morales, seconded by Councillor Owen, that the official plan motion and planning committee report from February 8th be amended by adding the following section. That map 5 be amended to reduce the Bradford Street cross section right of way protection of 22 meters. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Morales.
Perfect. Next slide, please. Basically, members of council, this motion seeks to align the ongoing Bradford Street EA with the OP's founding principles prior to the EA advancing to detailed design for 34 meters. Specifically, the aim for this is to align our future's downtown main corridor, Bradford Street, towards a walkable, financially sustainable, and safe street, but a pause on road widening. Protecting developable lands in our urban growth center in a housing crisis for roadway widening post-2051 is quite unusual based on a scan of similar municipalities in Ontario. Next slide, please. So lots of technical speak. I'll go through it. So basically, it's just, again, as I said earlier, Ms. Bregman feels that moving the EA towards 34, I'll kind of move that, is not justified and too much for public values, walkable, safe environment communities. And thus residents are facing an uphill battle by advocating against the OP and the TMT recommendations. There's also negative externalities. It means less housing, less available land, more auto dependency, worse safety, worse city financial conditions, and more noise as well. So the suggested process is they should obviously through this amendment dictate that, and staff can go with that direction with the EA. Next slide, please. So this is something really great Ms. Bregman did. She took a visualization on what it would mean to reduce that right of way, and reducing that right of way. So the amount of land that we would lose in increasing the right of way to 34 meter makes up more or less the units that are proposed here. So as you can see, she did a 20,000, roughly 20,510, and undevelopable land. And she did she did a rough estimation on the size. It's roughly the same units. So doing the right of way as found in the map right now would be like not getting 113 Bayfield, not getting YMCA, not getting 5 Points, 79 Collier, 49 Collier, and 39 to 67 Collier. So this is a significant visualization impact. Next slide, please. So again, this just outlines as to the intent of the goal to 2051. And just going very quickly on this, again, we don't want to create another Bayfield, specifically in our downtown. I believe there's a slide later that says other municipalities are specifically not doing that in their downtown, and Guelph is actually reducing a lane in their downtown. So by 2051, if we keep the right of way, we're projecting 2051 congestion levels, but that's the way North Americans currently behave. Not only are we encouraging more walkable communities, and we're building them, and the farmers market is a huge proponent of that, but also autonomous vehicles and better flow of traffic should mitigate the concerns based on current inputs and model projection. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes, this is the one I was talking about. So not only are they not moving to widening their roads in their downtown urban growth centers, Guelph is actually, according to Ms. Bregman, moving towards removing some lanes. So this is also comparable municipalities that we usually come up with. And so we should definitely be following Ms. Bregman feels the leadership of these cities. Next slide, please. Yes. Some more points here into what I've discussed. The impacts of road widening include the missed opportunity for Barrie's next walkable community. Allendale finally be moving forward. There's been great leadership on the Allendale hub and that neighborhood, and it's just right for a re-emergence in that area. And this obviously can further that goal by doing that. From a financial perspective, it's less tax revenue, potentially equivalent to 1,200 homes. Ms. Bregman feels that it's bad for business and tourism. Again, essentially creating that cold streetscape that you find on Bradford Street, as well as increased infrastructure and maintenance. And then Ms. Bregman says here, the city currently has a $48.4 million annual shortfall in transportation infrastructure, right? We can't do separated bike lanes because it's another also. This further reduces that increase in infrastructure, transportation, maintenance. Walkable, vibrant communities, high impact volumes are not compatible. And this also wouldn't be transit supported density. So by reducing the right of way, we're really moving towards those kind of aspects people like to see in Europe that they see. And finally, health, less walkable equals less healthy, pollution. And so I know there's been concerns about noise from cars along Ward 4 areas that abut a highway. So that this is another small step away from that concern. Next slide, please. I have 7 seconds left. I think these slides are pretty self-explanatory. There's my alarm, Mayor Lehman. And I think that is all, unless members have questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Morales, for the presentation, and particularly to the resident who prepared it from the committee. Really great information in there and a ton of work. So thank you so much for that. On the amendment, members of council, Councillor Kungle.
Thank you. I've got some comments on the amendment and then maybe a couple of questions for staff. So deep respect for Hannah. I mean, I sit on the Active Transportation Sustainability committee, and we've had ongoing conversations about this. So I dug a little bit deeper because I wanted to really appreciate the impact of potentially supporting an amendment that reduces the 34 meters to 22. And currently this is how I'm understanding it. So while I'm not opposed to necessarily supporting the motion, this is what I understand the situation or impact could be by doing it. And I'll ask Ms. Banfield to maybe some questions after. So while I personally, would love to see, a 3-lane with intensified bike lanes, safer corridors, and we've talked about that through our committee meetings. My understanding is that staff are still trying, and I've heard that commentary, and it doesn't remove that from being an option. So I wanted just to clarify that my understanding is reducing the 34 meters specific to the right of way supports us by having enough land designated to design that in ways that can still support active transportation and some of the innovative aspects around transit-related and walkable communities. That because the EP and the community engagement process has actually just begun and will happen this year. So we've had the first public consultation. We have another one coming in the spring. The environmental aspect will come through it. We also still need to do an updated transportation master plan. So my understanding is if we do all that work and we see that we need something maybe even as big as 24 meters, we're in a position now where we have to purchase that land back from developers to be able to do the design that we're interested in. So I'm hoping Ms. Banfield could identify if I'm correct in understanding that keeping it to 34 meters as a right of way doesn't dictate that we are building roads or widening that for roads. It could actually be space that's used to activate pedestrians and bike lanes with formal infrastructure versus just painted lanes, and maybe even transit hubs or stops. So Ms. Banfield, can you just speak to if we reduce the 34 meters, we potentially reduce our options on design for active transportation?
Ms. Banfield.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Kungle. So the right of way that's proposed in the OP comes from the current transportation master plan. At the same time, staff are undertaking an environmental assessment on Bradford Street to determine the right sizing of that road. What's important to note is that for even to do bike lanes or pedestrian sidewalks or planted medians, we, the city, need land to do that. And the right of way really protects that amount of land. And when a right of way is identified in a document like the official plan, when a development application comes in, the city's in a position to be able to acquire enough land to get that protected right of way. So what you were saying, Councillor Kungle, is if it's a smaller number, if we get it to 22 and a developer comes in, we can only get 22 meters of land. Whereas if it's identified as 34, then we could acquire the full 34 meters. I think that's the point, that if we can't acquire the land, then if it comes to a different time and we need to acquire it, then you're right, the city would have to purchase it as the road work was happening.
So in the integrity of the process happening right now, what's available to us that want to see this vision, right? Of maybe not 5 lanes, maybe 3, because I don't see this as actually having to be the avenue to get there, that it could in fact potentially compromise what we can actually do around with the bike lanes and sidewalks and still staying to a 3-lane.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Kungle. So an option such as, maybe not to the point of a 22-meter right of way width, but an option of reducing the pavement and the vehicular traffic lanes is definitely being considered in the environmental assessment process.
And so I'm kind of, it feels like a bit of a catch-22 because while the presentation speaks to perhaps this bias or this interest or presentation around multi-lanes, so up to a 5-lane, I'm struggling with the potential positioning of us compromising a right-of-way width that we might want to actually really leverage for a 3-lane with different infrastructure to support protected bike lanes. So I guess the process is, if it is supported and we reduce this amendment supported and we go down to the 22 meters, if we actually need more space to do what we want to do to activate this for even active transportation walkable community visions, we either have to purchase the land and then we would actually have to come back and make an amendment to the OP. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Kungle, to be in a position for the city to acquire the full right-of-way width through the development approvals process, the Planning Act requires it has to be identified in an official plan document. So correct, if we reduced it now and the EA completed and it came at a higher, requesting a higher right-of-way width, it would be in our collective best interests to amend the official plan to capture that width.
Thank you. So, I mean, I'd love to hear from other members because, you know, I'd love to see 3 lanes and beautiful bike lanes with infrastructure so cyclists feel comfortable and this to be a real bright spot. But I'm still understanding the position to be, we've jeopardized the space to which we could actually do that and design it. And that the 4 meters doesn't have to just incentivize a design for roads.
Yeah.
So,
Councillor Kungle, I'm going to make a suggestion, and to you, Councillor Morales, the mover of the amendment, just in the interest of perhaps debating this issue now before we know what the outcome is. And I will editorialize a little by saying the presentations raised a great point. The amount of land that's being taken out of commission in a major area of our urban core. That being said, Bradford Street is also the only arterial road connecting north to south in the city of Barrie on the west end of the lake. So it's always going to be a key issue in terms of transportation. I'm not sure we can solve it tonight, but then including the one width or another in the official plan isn't addressing that issue. So here's my thought. If this amendment were referred to Planning Committee, the risk would be that as we proceed with the official plan submission to the province, comments, and or any other changes over the coming weeks, you know, the EA process is also going to continue. And I think we may have a much better sense of what different widths would actually produce. And so I guess the risk, and I'll ask this as a procedure question to Ms. Banfield, if council were to refer this amendment to a future planning committee meeting to have that talk about, you know, with the benefit of the EA process being further advanced and a really good discussion around this issue, what would be the result if the outcome of that discussion was a desire to, in fact, pass this amendment at a later date? Would the city be forced into a separate housekeeping official plan amendment because we didn't do it tonight?
Mayor Lehman, it would really depend on the timing. I don't expect the province is going to approve the official plan the day after they receive it from us. So I do think that depending on the timing, they're most likely, you know, we can hope, but I'm not expecting that to happen. So depending on the timing, there could be the ability to make a submission to the province as they're considering the entire official plan, and there are going to be modifications, I suspect, coming from the province that'll have to come back to council. So again, if we do it, you know, I would say in the next, you know, 2 to 3 months, I think there's the ability for us to do that. Again, in the if we don't do it, the wording on the map specifically does say a maximum road right-of-way width. That there's nothing that says it has to be the 34 meters. It does say a minimum, and certainly if there is council direction to require a smaller right-of-way, that is something that staff could operationalize because the wording does say maximum right-of-way.
Okay, that's good to know, because if the EA, I think that it's an excellent point that's been raised here. And I think if the EA, which is going to determine the preferred cross-section and make a recommendation, and that'll come to this council in terms of the preferred alternative, you know, we can then give our opinion as to whether it's taking too much land out of circulation or not, whether we like what the cross-section looks like or not. I mean, 34 meters is huge. That's 9 lanes. So, and it's not going to be 9 road lanes, I'm sure. It would be other, you know, active transportation and so forth, but that's a lot of roadway anyway. So when that comes back, you know, we could provide further direction at that point that will ensure that the land isn't taken out of circulation, if that's the choice of council. So, Councillor Morales, we could proceed with the amendment if you want to tonight. I think it does create the risk that if the EA comes back with something different, then we would be forced at that point, and we could be at risk of a development application coming in the interim and us approving something that then we have to try and change later, which could be difficult if there's a building on it.
Absolutely. Mayor Lehman, every day I learn how to read a room a little bit better, and I'm reading it now. Sometimes you have to know when to hold them, when to fold them, and when to refer it. Let's refer it.
Okay.
So can make a better decision for everybody in the city.
Okay, so the referral motion is to send this to a future planning committee meeting to be dealt with alongside the EA for Bradford Street, I think. Correct, Councilor Morales? Yep, okay, I'll call the question on the referral motion, which is not debatable. Those in favor? Any opposed? None? That carries. And on the amendment as now amended to be referred, I have to call the question on that again. Those in favor, please indicate. Okay, nobody's opposed. That carries. So the amendment is carried and referred. Madam Clerk.
We need a seconder for the referral motion.
Oh my goodness, you're quite right. I'm sorry. Councilor Morales moved the referral. Councilor Aylwin, who's the original seconder, he seconded it. There we go. Thank you for that. Okay, members of council, are there any further amendments on the official plan? Anybody wish to make further comment? Councilor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lehman. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to Michelle Banfield and her team. I know I've been back and forth with Ms. Banfield and her staff quite a few times for some of these amendments, and I do really appreciate all the assistance that she's provided to me, and I'm sure probably to the rest of us around the table too, to get through this this new official plan. So I just want to make sure that I send out a good thank you, because I know I've probably bothered you the most.
Thanks, Councilor Harvey. Any other comments? Well, I'll just echo those. This is an enormous amount of work going back many years by an entire team to get to this point. And even with changes, as there always are late in the process, this is a dramatically different blueprint for growth in our city. It is the first really comprehensive overhaul of our official plan in decades. And it is quite a different kind of plan than we've had in the past. It's really setting the city up for a period of sustained growth, but much different, much smarter growth, much more intensification, much more focus on things like public spaces, and all of the aspects that make quality of life in our city. So congratulations to our staff team, and thank you, members of council, for your work on the amendments and your review over the past month or so. And with that, I will call the question on section B, as amended many times. Those in favor? Any opposed? None? Official plan carries unanimously. The balance of it. Thank you very much. I think that completes the committee reports.
There's a section
Have you got anything else? Oh, sorry, we do have the section C, the additional piece that was not circulated. Go ahead.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section C of the Planning Committee report dated February 8, 2022, as circulated, be received.
Okay. It is moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section C of the Planning Committee report, as which was not circulated, actually be received. And because it wasn't circulated, we're going to need some description on that. Deputy Mayor Ward, have you got that, or shall I go to the clerk?
I think the clerk should answer that question.
Okay, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to members of council. It is to receive the notes from the public meeting on the Duckworth Street application from last week's meeting. And it was circulated because just the motion wasn't circulated, but the minutes were circulated.
Yes. So, and that's why it's okay to proceed with this. Otherwise, I would have pushed it to 2 weeks out. But this, it was included in the minutes, but the motion was not circulated in the list of motions. So, to be clear, this is to receive the report on the meeting. Councilor Morales, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Liam. I'd like to declare a real and direct pecuniary interest on this amendment, as receiving the report speaks to a meeting that included my property and my parents. I won't be voting on the matter.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Has Councilor Morales' conflict been recorded?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it has.
Thank you very much. Members of council, any comments or questions on section C? It's to be received. Seeing none, those in favor? Or any opposed? None. Carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ward. That completes the committee reports. It brings us to direct motions, and we do have a direct motion tonight. Councillor Gary Harvey, I believe you have this. It's a motion without notice, so we'll need the procedural motion first. Go ahead.
Actually, Your Worship, I'm not aware of a direct motion that I have.
Oh, okay. Madam Clerk, I have Councillor Harvey's name on this.
Sorry, there was a clerical error on the motion. It's actually Councillor Morales and Councillor Jim Harris.
Makes a bit more sense. Councillor Morales, go ahead. Sorry, you're still on mute, Councillor Morales.
Wow, I finished the motion. I was speaking fast. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Jim Harris. Motion notice for vacancy downtown Barrie BI Board of Management that pursuant to section 7.1 of the Procedure Bylaw 2019-100, permission be granted to introduce a motion without notice concerning board vacancy downtown Barrie Business Improvement Association BI Board of Management.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Morales, seconded by Councillor Harris, that pursuant to section 7.1 of the procedural bylaw, permission be granted to introduce a motion without notice concerning board vacancy, downtown Barrie Business Improvement Association Board of Management. Requires a 2/3 majority as it's motion without notice. Any comments on the procedural motion? Seeing none, those in favor of the procedural motion, please indicate. Nobody's opposed. That carries. Go ahead, Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. And it's the board vacancy. It's specifically that Victoria Butler be appointed to the Downtown Barrie BI Improvement Association Board of Management for the remainder of the term ending November 14th, 2022. And I can speak to that.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Morales, seconded by Councillor Jim Harris, that Victoria Butler be appointed to the Downtown Barrie BIA Board of Management for the remainder of the term ending November 14th, 2022. Go ahead, Councillor Morales.
Perfect. Very quickly, Mayor Lehman, this was approved by the board at the November meeting. As members of council would have seen an email from the clerk's office earlier today, this got lost in the emails. The clerk's office as an entity gets thousands of emails. This literally just got lost. And then Christmas, people are busy and not meeting and not following up on this. So the reason why motion without notice is because this was the BIA board motion from November, and we're just taking care of it now. And everybody is very sorry that we are doing this at 10:33 p.m.
That's okay, Councillor Morales, thanks for that. Any comments or questions on the motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Are any opposed to the motion? None. That carries. And congratulations to Ms. Butler. Okay, that completes the business items for council. We're at inquiries. Deputy Mayor Ward, do you have any inquiries of staff?
I have none.
Members of council, any inquiries of staff? Seeing none. Announcements, Deputy Mayor Ward.
I have none.
Members of council. Councillor Aylwin and Councillor Kunkel. Go ahead.
Sorry, that was really confusing. I put my no sign up for a second there.
I
sorry
knew
about
it.
that.
I was assuming you weren't just saying no, I don't have announcements.
At least it's not on.
On, yeah.
That's what I was trying to say. Quick announcement, there's a neighborhood meeting for a proposed development. It's the HIP development at the former Barrie Central site. So that's happening tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. And residents can find that on the proposed developments page on the city's website for Ward 2. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. See you there.
Thank you very much, Councillor Aylwin. Councillor Kunkel.
Thank you. through you, Mayor Lehman, a couple of announcements. One is the Walk With Me Wednesdays is back. So reach out if you'd like, but you can find me at the Georgia Mall at 7 a.m. on Wednesdays through the rest of February and March. And my other announcement is, I think, echoing the note of appreciation to those working in the shelter system. So council had an opportunity to learn more about the Happy Hearts, Full Bellies campaign through the Salvation Army, which, as members of public heard tonight, do a lot of the meal prep and making for Busby. And we got to tour and learn more about programming, but also I wanted to shout out a thank you. We had the pleasure of meeting Emma, who was working in the kitchen at the Salvation Army, actually pulling a double shift on Saturday. And so I know Emma was recognized as amongst others, but I would just like to say thank you for all you're doing. And it was great to see through your eyes and assist in some way over the weekend. So again, the Happy Hearts, Full Bellies Happy Hearts campaign is running. In addition to our shelter system, most might also see that this is a month that Youth Haven has their coldest night of the year walk. And there's lots of opportunities to support initiatives through our shelters and those reaching out to look at helping to both feed and clothe those in need. My last announcement is you may have seen through media a showcase of doing cards for seniors living in congregate settings who might be staying at the hospital at this time and living in long-term care. So last year, the North Simcoe Muskoka Specialized Geriatric Services team, led by Sandra Eason Bruno, a lovely Ward 3 resident, started the Show the Love. So hashtag Show the Love is being used through social media. And this year they were able to partner with the McLaren Arts Center, schools and classes, and Barrie Police and other members across the community. So please do look at that campaign. We are hoping to see lots of digital photos that will be used and shared with residents who might be living in a bit more isolated this time of year. So thanks for that, Sandra, and others that partnered to show the love.
Thanks, Councillor Congo. Any other announcements? Okay, seeing none. Family Day, February 21st, families are invited to be active together at the city's community centers or outside. We have the Family Day Winter Adventure located at the Barrie Community Sports Complex. There's more information on Family Day activities at barrie.ca, the website. Our community energy and greenhouse gas draft plan is now available for review. You can participate in the survey and review the draft plan at buildingbarrie.ca/community energy. The City of Barrie is consulting with landowners, residents, environmental groups, developers, and businesses to get feedback on preferences about the approach to regulating individual tree removal within the city. This is the private tree bylaw I mentioned earlier. PIC is February 24th. That's a public information center on the 24th from 4 till 6 p.m. Survey is open until March 11th. You can register for the PIC, which will be virtual, at buildingbarrie.ca/trees. buildingbarrie.ca/trees. As part of the Cycle Barrie Infrastructure Program, there is a public information center on February 24th at 7 p.m. This will focus on completing the design for 20 kilometers of new bike lanes and provide information to the public on corridors for bike lanes. buildingbarrie.ca/cyclebarrie. Finally, New Foundations is a city initiative offering select property owners the opportunity to apply for support to do an affordable housing feasibility study. We've talked about this a few times over the last few weeks. Through New Foundations, the city will be funding up to 10 housing feasibility studies. You are eligible to apply if you own or represent a Barrie property zoned institutional, or own or represent a place of worship zoned for residential uses. Applications will be accepted until March 1st, barrie.ca/New Foundations for more information. All the rest are reminders that I think I can dispense with. By this point in the winter, everybody knows you can't park on street overnight. And if you are having trouble with snow being plowed in, snow angels, snowangelscanada.ca to get some help with that. There will be no meeting next Monday, February 24th, due to the Family Day holiday. We will see you for General Committee on Monday, February 28th. The bylaws, please, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time to stay and finally passed. Bill 9.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill will be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 9. Comments or questions? Seeing none. Those in favor? Anybody opposed? None. That's carried. Confirmation, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 10.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 10, the confirmation bylaw. Comments or questions? Seeing none. Those in favor? Anybody opposed to the confirmation bylaw? None. That carries. Special thank you tonight to the long-suffering partners and friends, girlfriends, boyfriends of members of council and staff who are missing them and of council members and staff who are missing us tonight because of this meeting. Happy Valentine's Day. With that, can I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Riepma. We are adjourned. We'll see you in 2 weeks, folks. Good night.